It all kicks off with the MC holding his weapon like an absolute boss after an intense battle. He considers himself a massive fan of role-playing and literally only plays for the fun of it. Just then, our guy quickly backs up to dodge a massive attack, keeping his cool stance as always. Even under heavy pressure, he swears he's never regretted or felt embarrassed by his unique playstyle. The huge beast with an animal skull roars furiously, calling his opponent a coward for just running away from the fight. Wasting zero time, the creature unleashes a barrage of spikes, demanding the human just give up already. Getting pushed back, the guy reflects on how his confidence was totally unshakable before jumping into this specific virtual world. A heavy hit lands right on him, causing a ton of damage, while he internally complains about how insanely hard this challenge is. Barely holding onto his sword, he questions why he even needs to go through something so exhausting. His only wish was to get some chill entertainment to forget how draining everyday life can be. Panting and completely out of breath, he uses his own blade as a crutch to try and stand up one more time. Surprised by such wild endurance, the opponent mocks his weakened body and insists that taking the L is inevitable. Preparing a strike that looks like game over, the beast asks if the human really wants to meet his maker right there. Totally drained physically and mentally, the MC yells at the top of his lungs that he wants to rage quit this pointless roleplay. An intense energy explodes around him while he makes it crystal clear he just wants to go back to the comfort of his own house. Right then, a system screen pops out of nowhere in front of him, starting a super mysterious data loading process. The interface quickly confirms the user's connection and drops a direct welcome message with a corrupted name. A painful memory takes over the scene, flashing back to the tragic day his little sister ran out of the house without warning. Sadly, the pretty light-colored dress she had gotten ended up ruined after a totally disastrous and brutal event. Desperate at the terrible sight, the dad runs toward the fallen girl, screaming her name with everything he's got. Right after, the older brother, who happened to be the guard captain, was also caught off guard and paid the price. Furious about the sudden invasion, he tries to fight back somehow and throws some seriously hateful words at the attacker. Heavy tears of frustration roll down the knight's face when he realizes the tragedy was already a done deal. But before he could even make a move, a devastating impact hits him head-on, making the family's situation way worse. In the middle of all that deafening chaos, the MC's mom yelled something super important to him. She urgently ordered the boy to run away as fast as possible to save himself. Crying non-stop, the kid refuses to ditch his family, stubbornly claiming he can help in the fight too. The mom then practically begs him in total distress to understand how bad things are and run far away from that danger. With that, the guy's vision goes dark as he watches his own dad get struck hard in the back by surprise. Without really knowing how or why, the boy grabbed a weapon off the ground while the rest of his memories blurred together. From that shocking second on, the whole world around the kid seemed to turn a dark, gloomy shade of red. The colors slowly warped until only the soft moonlight lit up the completely wrecked scenery. An unbearable pain took over when something pierced his right arm deep, and without an ounce of pity. Groaning on the floor, all he can hear are the heavy footsteps of the mystery attacker walking away. With zero energy left to keep fighting, the boy completely collapses, trying to endure that absurd suffering. A figure totally wrapped in shadows stares at the defeated kid and decides he's gonna make an excellent vessel. The boy tries to protest using whatever tiny bit of energy he has left, weakly mumbling for all of it to stop. Coldly ignoring his plea, the entity declares the kid will become something super valuable under its total control. With heavy tears streaming down his bruised face, the young guy sends out one last desperate prayer in his tired mind. He prays with all his faith that a soul great enough will show up to overcome all that evil that ruined his life. A heroic image in shiny armor crosses his thoughts like the ultimate personification of that distant hope. The boy begs for someone strong enough to take down the shadowy beast that now lives inside his body. Suddenly, a voice echoes deep in his mind asking if he can hear it, making him wake up with a massive jump scare. The MC blinks, looking pretty confused, needing a few seconds to adjust to how bright the room is. An impatient dude yells right nearby, harshly asking if the passenger is gonna get off or just keep stalling. Around them, a really sunny and busy city reveals itself, showing they've arrived at a buzzing trading post. The guy just stares at the guide in total silence, still trying to process the heavy images that just faded away. Then he stands up all at once with a sudden movement that actually startles the guy next to him. Without explaining a single thing, the MC turns his back and starts walking away with heavy steps, completely ignoring the driver. The man grumbles in annoyance that the passenger is a total weirdo, while the guy keeps walking like nothing happened. A slight feeling of curiosity and hype takes over the MC as he checks out the little details around him. Visibly hyped, he celebrates the mind-blowing quality of that virtual world, feeling like he's in a real place. He's amazed that the intro felt like a living memory, also praising how natural the NPC's reactions are. He admits to himself that he had to try really hard not to bust a move in the middle of the square out of sheer joy. That bustling environment is actually the starting zone of an insanely famous title that just got re-released. 15 years ago, this game was considered an absolute legend among fans, but they pulled the plug on the servers way too early. Looking up at the sky with a dreamy look, he reveals he's waited basically forever to relive this experience. Like a true roleplay nerd, he puts his hand over his face in a dramatic pose, complaining about some imaginary eye pain. Right after, he defends himself saying he doesn't usually act like this, but he loves taking the chance to mess around. Pretty proud of his own work, he even imagines showing off the slick designs he made to create that avatar. The class he picked to dominate this run is all about manipulating dark energy for combat perks. The whole backstory he cooked up for the character involves living with a sealed beast that threatens to eat its host every single day. Acting his heart out, he grabs his left arm and mutters that everyone nearby is in serious danger if they aren't careful. Setting up a super mysterious vibe, he lowers his voice, trying to sound edgy and dangerous to anyone crossing his path. He dramatically claims that these innocent folks could meet a terrible fate by his own uncontrollable hands. Playing up this invented lone wolf persona, he walks through the alleys making sure to keep his distance from the crowd. Super happy with his creation, he happily cheers that the visual and narrative concept turned out absolutely top tier. He remembers dropping a good chunk of real-world cash to score those stylish threads, but swears he has zero regrets. However, he soon realizes he focused so much on his fantastic acting that he completely forgot what he was actually supposed to do there. Standing in a quiet corner, he wonders where the system notification telling him the next step went. He starts getting confused by the lack of UI markers, wondering if he should track down a local guide. Exactly at that moment, a little kid pops out of nowhere and shyly asks if he's the famous Dark Warrior. The MC stares at the little kid for a second, trying to calculate how the dialogue system in this world works. Surprised to see no floating dialogue options, he figures out he's gonna have to use his own words with no training wheels. Quickly snapping back into his mysterious hero persona, he makes a super serious face and orders the kid to point the way. The little guy stutters, nodding along, totally spooked by the sudden demand. With that, the boy starts leading the way, confirming their destination is the famous Adventurers Guild. The MC is blown away by how nervous the kid is, thinking the AI is way too realistic. As they walk, he thinks about the details of the scenery, noticing how organically the citizens react. Soon his mind wanders, remembering that tech hadn't advanced quite enough to create something this complex back in the day. Reaching their destination in no time, the little kid lets him know they finally made it. In silence, the Dark Knight carefully observes the massive building right in front of him. Stepping into the busy lobby, the system quickly pings his location, confirming he entered the... Totally in awe, the player praises the graphics, joking internally that the devs must have used straight-up black magic. A bit later, a receptionist hurries over to officially welcome him. Super friendly, the young lady introduces herself as Isrin, one of the officers in charge of local registrations. She then mentions his look is very striking and asks to check his official adventurer badge. Just then, a floating pop-up teaches him the command to access his inventory by sticking his hand in his bag. Confused by the situation, the guy realizes he can't see any magical UI floating in the air like in older games. Even though he finds it weird to have to physically do the motion, he searches for the item, praising the immersive mechanic. Quickly pulling out the document, the officer checks it and confirms his ID is all good to go. Wasting no time, she asks if she can go ahead and explain the details of this extremely urgent request. The knight nods, thinking to himself that this setup has to be the long-awaited tutorial quest. Suddenly, an angry older guy yells, calling the newcomer problematic and arrogant. Surprised by the rudeness, the guy just notes the super short temper of the veteran guild leader. The old man asks if he's crazy for taking the job without knowing the risks, which gets the player hyped to freely roleplay. Keeping up his intimidating act, he chooses to stay silent, making the receptionist sweat bullets from the tension. Getting his best acting ready, the guy quickly thinks of the perfect line to keep his character's edgy vibe going. Shooting him a glaring look, he dismissively states that the old man's tongue seriously lacks some manners. The guild leader backs up, completely spooked by such a sharp comeback. Noticing the strong reaction, the player himself is confused by the NPC's totally exaggerated flint. A dark memory creeps into his mind, revealing details he had brushed off before. But the doubt about the elderly leader's genuine reaction keeps bouncing around in his head. Luckily, the quest progress notification finally pops up floating in his vision. Getting back into character, the knight convinces himself he had no choice but to follow the scripted storyline. Celebrating internally, he thinks it's awesome how well the NPCs react to his theatrical roleplay. Trying to break the heavy mood, the officer starts explaining the gig. Totally immersed, the warrior threateningly asks if the job could actually be dangerous for him. Cranking up the tension in the room, he talks trash about the possible enemies, calling them all pathetic bugs. The receptionist gets visibly nervous from the adventurer's oppressive aura. Happy with the show he's putting on, the guy asks to cut to the chase, and the young client thanks him for his bravery. The client explains that things went really south underground, and none of the workers made it back to the surface. Apparently, the city's sewer tunnels got totally overrun by swarms of dangerous creatures. Since a rescue was pretty much a lost cause, the main task focuses on wiping out the threats and grabbing the lost gear. Doubling down on the warning, the veteran grumbles that every hunter before him ended up biting the dust in that hole. Doubting the rookie's physical build, the client asks if someone so skinny can actually fight well. Annoyed by the system taking forever to update, the MC claps back rudely, demanding not to be compared to scrubs. Seeing more drama coming, the old man tries to step in to cool things down during the negotiation. The player admits to himself that acting like that makes him cringe when the NPCs react so realistically. Even so, he decides dealing with this immersion beats putting up with other players trolling his experience. Getting back to business, Isran formally asks if he's gonna take on the proposed challenge. She then starts filling out the paperwork, detailing the goals of clearing the area and finding the items. To lock down the info, the hero asks for the exact number of people missing in the incident. After the client confirms 13 people, the player takes the chance to ask what the deadline is. Getting 1 whole month as a time limit, the MC figures out the quest progresses purely based on dialogue. The officer announces a massive cash reward, but the admin fee cut leaves the guy feeling totally scammed. With all the details set, the contract is locked in, requiring a report at the end of the job. As soon as he stamps the document, the visual prompt he's been waiting for finally shows up. Seeing the floating window, he internally roasts the devs for hiding the UI on purpose. Still, he admits to himself that he's absolutely loving how hardcore the simulation is. Before heading out, the client lets him know they already booked a room for him at the local. A worn-out piece of paper is handed to the warrior, who can't believe his minimap is literally just a hand-drawn sketch. With a look full of hope, the young client doubles down on his trust that the operation will be a win. That genuine expression makes the MC feel the real weight of getting involved in these people's mess. All this emotional depth makes him super tense, feeling like he's the lead actor in a giant stage play. Going all in on the tough guy act, he loudly promises that failing is never an option once a deal is struck. The heavy sound of metal rings out as the massive security gate slowly opens up. The warrior stands alone, facing the dark, sketchy entrance to the underground. Outside, the local guide wishes him luck and warns him one more time about how savage those beasts are. Pulling a ridiculously huge sword off his back, the player mentally hypes up the destructive power of his heavy weapon. In one single, lightning-fast move, he takes out the first freaky creature that jumps out of a pipe. Standing over the defeated monster, he quickly checks how much damage his first attack did. To his dismay, the system points out that his giant gear lost durability for no reason in that tight space. Realizing that banging it against stone walls would just break his favorite weapon, he decides to switch tactics. He pulls a standard longsword from his waist, giving him way more flexibility for these narrow hallways. Now properly geared up, the hunter gets hyped to sweep that gloomy place. The helper stays at the gate, watching the lone figure vanish into the dark. Seriously impressed, the man figures the young guy's aura is way too scary for a normal person. Rooting for a win, he just hopes the guy's combat skills match all that intimidating energy. A little while later, deep in the damp tunnels, the knight aggressively pushes forward, throwing insults at the shadows. Showing zero mercy, the knight lands a clean hit on the green monster and dares those pests to keep attacking. Right after, he unleashes a relentless combo of moves, dropping several of those creatures all at once. Catching an opening, the player deletes another enemy trying to sneak up on his flank. Totally lost in the sauce of his character, he swears he'll send them all back to whatever awful place they crawled out of. With the impact, the enemy's remains hit the stone floor, completely lifeless. Looking around at the scenery, the warrior complains that this whole situation is getting insanely boring. Just then, a floating system screen updates his clearing progress, making him wonder how they let such weak mobs run loose for so long. Taking a deep breath after the workout, he quickly shifts focus to a way more important detail. Totally dropping the tough guy act, the guy flips out, ranting that he's been grinding this whole time and hasn't gotten a single good drop. Panicking, he finally gets that the crazy high upfront payment was literally just to make up for the monsters having zero loot. Super frustrated by the game being so cheap, he admits to himself he wants to dig through those creatures' bodies with his bare hands just to see if he finds something. But he quickly gets a grip and decides this isn't the right time for that, since there's a little survivor watching his every move. Suddenly, another enemy drops from the tunnel's ceiling screaming, after being caught totally off guard. Without even breaking a sweat, the knight just stomps hard on the down threat. Just up ahead, the rescued little kid, who is hanging upside down, shyly says thanks for the save. Staring at the boy, the player wonders if this was the optional side quest, and notices he looks kind of like the little brother from his intro cutscene. A bitter memory hits him, reminding him that the beast that ruined his family now lives inside his own body, making it a miracle he hasn't lost his mind yet. As the kid safely climbs down, the warrior thinks that at least he stopped a tragedy this time around. Sticking to the roleplay, he figures his grumpy character wouldn't complain out loud, but he'd definitely show a soft spot for kids. Avoiding using his cursed arm so he doesn't scare the boy, he strikes a heroic pose and declares that protecting the weak is the basic job of any knight. With eyes shining full of admiration, the little survivor innocently asks if that guy is actually a real knight. Super proud of his own comeback, the player pats himself on the back for not being a jerk to the kid, thinking he picked the perfect dialogue option. Walking back through the dark tunnel, he asks why the kid was lost down there, finding out his mom came down for work and never made it back. The little guy sadly explains he tried looking for her by himself and apologizes for being a burden. Bothered by such a heavy vibe, the swordsman claps back firmly that kids shouldn't carry that kind of baggage and need to trust adults more. Feeling the sting of the scolding, the little one drops his head, almost in tears, and says sorry again. Internally panicking seeing the kid so sad, the guy tries to do damage control and loudly announces that he's not the one who should be getting an apology. Then, dropping the harsh reality of the rescue, he shows the loot recovered during the sweep, making the kid recognize his mom's tools. The kid completely breaks down into heart-wrenching sobs as he realizes what happened, leaving the adventurer too awkward to interrupt the mourning. In the end, after the kid cries himself to sleep from pure exhaustion, the warrior ends up carrying the sleeping boy on his back out of there. Walking in total silence, the MC thinks about how motion capture tech makes virtual characters feel way too alive and hard to ignore. Getting closer and closer to the surface, he sighs in relief knowing all this suffering is just a simulation. Climbing up the stone steps, a notification pops up saying he needs holy powers to fully cleanse the traces of those beasts from the area. Reading the prompt, he zones out, wondering if paying attention to this stuff earlier would have saved him from some past regrets. Suddenly, a local resident comes running in pure panic, screaming for backup ASAP. Up in the city sky, a bright red flare explodes, signaling a massive emergency involving the local merchant guild. The knight's eyes sharpen as he hears the warnings about multiple people dropping at that exact moment. Far away from there, the situation is a straight-up nightmare, with dozens of injured folks trying to survive an overwhelming attack. Covered in blood, one of the guards stares at the destruction around him in absolute shock. Nearby, another survivor tries to curl up in a dark corner, praying he isn't the next one sent to the lobby. Shaking with fear, the guy covers his own mouth, trying not to make a peep that might draw aggro. Back at the Adventurers Guild, the story cuts back to when the rescued kid woke up and tried to comfort himself by believing his mom was in a better place. Nodding along with the kid, the swordsman agrees, while sarcastically thinking that the only gods around here are the devs of this sim. Walking into the main lobby, he looks pretty disturbed, concluding that this level of tragedy could only be written by some seriously sadistic writers. As soon as he walks up to the front desk, the friendly receptionist greets him, asking why he's back at base. Shocked by the surprise +1, the young worker's eyes go wide when she notices the exhausted kid hiding behind him. Straight to the point, he explains that it's the son of one of the missing workers and asks her to talk to the kid herself to get the details. Right after, the warrior drops a massive cloth sack on the counter with a heavy thud, announcing another delivery. The receptionist confusedly asks what that is, and the player casually replies that it's the gear recovered during the underground sweep. Blown away by how huge the bag is, she holds it and asks if the belongings of all 13 victims are in there. With his classic arrogant attitude, he claps back dryly asking what else it could be, making the girl stutter that she'll sort it out for the families. Carefully opening the bag, the worker checks the dog tags mixed in with the items, confirming the tragic end of those warriors. A respectful silence washes over the girl as she looks closely at the ultimate proof that no one else was making it out of that mission alive. Moved by the rookie's hustle, she hugs the package and bows deeply, saying thanks on behalf of the whole guild. Internally, the adventurer is raging about what a nightmare it was to loot every single item in the dark, absolutely hating the lack of floating quest markers. Even so, he admits that hearing the girl's choked-up voice full of gratitude makes all his tilt fade away, finding that level of digital empathy a bit spooky. Changing the subject fast, the guy asks if this delivery finally wraps up his scheduled hunting tasks for the day. Almost instantly, he mentally scolds himself for even suggesting a break, since a real tryhard gamer should never stop grinding. Remembering the crazy expensive full-dive VR gear he bought so he wouldn't even have to sleep in the real world, he decides to maximize every second. Focusing back on the receptionist, he demands to know why he'd have to go back to that filthy tunnel, trying to fish for some hidden quest step. Keeping up the threatening tone, the knight guesses out loud that the requirement must be about the cleansing, thinking the toxic environment was dealing invisible damage to his character. Totally lost in the conversation, the worker just blinks in confusion, having zero clue what magical cleaning he's talking about. Nervous about the warrior's reaction, she tries to explain she only suggested a break so he could drop the kid off somewhere safe before facing the rest of the danger. The guy stares at her with a deadpan face, making it super clear the only reason he even came back to the lobby was just to get the kid off the streets. Milking the misunderstanding, he pretends to be super offended by the idea that he couldn't handle the job, demanding answers in an intimidating way. Panicking over the heavy vibe, the young lady waves her hands frantically, swearing she'd never doubt his skills and practically begging for forgiveness. Trying to defuse things ASAP, she promises the guild will look after the rescued boy and asks the adventurer to follow her to talk directly to the client. Turning around to follow her, the player decides to use the walk to check out the new options on his skill tree panel. Just ahead, the system confirms the contract is complete, and a nice fat bag of coins clinks on the table, totaling up to the awesome agreed reward. Checking out the payout, he mentally complains about how stingy the devs are for not making mobs drop gold, forcing everyone to rely on these official gigs. Right then, the grumpy leader lets him know they covered the admin fees out of pocket, and that the monster mats would fetch a good price on the market. Noticing he got bonus points in resource gathering skills, he realizes he can actually get rich by farming and processing enemy drops. Wanting to keep his cool rep in front of the NPCs, he smirks dismissively and downplays the reward, calling the cash literal pocket chain. His attention quickly shifts to the massive, complex dark skill tree available, confirming the system actually unlocked perks perfectly tailored to his edgy roleplay. Super hyped about the destructive attack options, the guy celebrates that he's playing a solo run where he can spend his points however he wants, hoping to unlock even crazier powers later. Plotting his next moves, the guy figures he needs to grind fast so he can level up ASAP. Since the guild leader asks if they're done doing business, he turns his back and says he's heading out. Just then, a system chime jump scares the MC, confirming the sewer quest was cleared perfectly. Suddenly, a dude runs in screaming for help, making the grumpy old man curse the guy's total lack of manners. Panicking completely, the messenger yells that they have a massive emergency on their hands. He explains that the guild's danger flare was just popped right nearby. While the leader looks shell-shocked, the guy says the city guards are taking forever, and the player figures this is the hook for the next quest. Furious about the guards dropping the ball, the old man orders them to send the guild's guys to the spot immediately. Pointing a finger at the rookie, the boss orders him to go too, but the guy decides to play hard to get before accepting. Keeping his character's intimidating vibe, the warrior warns the old man not to try bossing him around. The old man doesn't waste time and promises top-tier pay, practically begging him to just hurry up and go. Happy with the deal, the player takes the gig and tells the messenger to lead the way while the receptionist handles the paperwork. A new quest window pops up in his face, locking in the objective to save the survivor. When the guide suggests he group up with the mercs, the guy instantly rejects it and tells him to take him straight to the action. Looking at the red sky outside, the man agrees, mentioning that they literally don't have time to form a party anyway. The leader calms everyone down by saying to let the kid fly solo, reminding them he soloed the sewers with zero backup. The messenger agrees and says they have horses ready, making the player feel super confident thanks to his simulation game experience. Riding at max speed, the MC yells for his precious XP points to hang in there until he arrives. Far off, the dark sky swarming with crows sets the stage for the tragedy going down. A massive explosion rocks the merchant camp, causing absolute chaos in the area. Crashing the party, the Dark Knight charges in, declaring that victory belongs to his blade. In the blink of an eye, he drops a devastating slashing attack with his weapon. The strike perfectly connects with one of the nightmare creatures, launching it miles away. Finishing his dramatic one-liner, the warrior yells about the glory of the heavens while dealing more damage. The cornered survivors cheer for the backup, but get super confused when they realize it's literally just one dude fighting. Desperate, one of the guards tries to shove a monster off, screaming he can't get wiped now that help finally showed up. Without the guy even noticing, another beast tries to backstab him but gets dropped by a lightning-fast slash. The MC lands smoothly on the ground after clutching the merc's life at the very last second. Now the solo warrior stands right on the front line against the mob horde, tanking for the injured. Looking over his shoulder looking like an absolute boss, he confirms the SOS and promises he's gonna carry everyone to safety. Full of swagger, the swordsman announces he's gonna wipe all those pests before the wounded bleed out. Seeing the guard completely baffled that he wants to solo the mob, the player thinks it's not even worth explaining. Going totally tryhard mode, the guy's eyes get an intense, menacing red glow. Flexing an overwhelming aura, he calls the enemies literal bugs and promises to delete every single one of them. An insane combo of red slashes rips through the air, shredding the creatures with zero mercy. To wrap things up, a massive vertical strike splits the biggest threat right down the middle, ending the fight. Shook by the sheer flex of power, the mercs just stare at their savior in dead silence. The knight just stands there in the middle of the wrecked battlefield, keeping his edgy, mysterious vibe going. Shaking from the shock, one of the down guys struggles to find words to describe how busted that stranger is. His buddy gets so freaked out he even wonders if their savior isn't actually a boss monster himself. Far away from there, a red-haired knight senses a seriously messed up vibe in the air and goes on high alert. Instantly, she tells the archmage they need to hit the road to the trading post the second the sun comes up. Seeing the mage doubt her, she seriously explains she's picking up on insanely overpowered dark energy coming from that direction. Meanwhile, the MC checks his quest log, noticing he already cleared the targets but still needs to handle the NPCs. Fixing his hair dramatically, he's busy praising the game's graphics right when one of the guards walks up to say thanks. The chill moment dies fast when the guard panics, pointing out his squad is getting hit by dark corruption. The system drops a tooltip explaining that NPCs hit by those mobs have a super high RNG chance of getting infected. As the energy spreads, the victim starts mutating, making his friends freak out because they only brought painkillers in their inventory. Watching this play out, the player finally remembers this annoying mechanic from the base game. Every time someone took damage from those beasts, an infection meter would fill up crazy fast, making things worse. Since his class basically has a passive immunity to it, he admits to himself he completely forgot about that terrible feature. Trying to save everyone to max out the quest rewards, he opens his inventory, ready to burn his own consumables. Reaching out, the warrior hands some sketchy vials to the guard, who looks totally lost. Once he realizes they're ultra-rare anti-corruption antidotes, the guy practically cries tears of joy. Playing it cool, the guy tosses more bandages in pots, ordering them to pop everything ASAP. Watching the guard hustle to pass out the meds makes the MC wonder why the game hooked him up with so much starter loot. The quest window updates with the final survivor count, and he figures the tracker is hard-locked at that number. Right then, the loud sound of horse hooves grabs the solo warrior's attention. The actual city backup finally rolls into the wrecked camp, making the mercs absolutely lose their minds cheering. With things under control, the player sighs in relief seeing the quest complete banner finally pop up. The hype dies instantly when a part 2 of the quest drops, forcing him to loot the bodies and grab the dropped gear. Salty about the chore, he mentally complains about having to play janitor on the battlefield. Looking bored out of his mind, the guy figures that picking up trash off the floor would totally ruin his cool mystery aesthetic. Refusing to get his hands dirty, he dips from the group and chills in the trees to watch them work. Noticing the progress bar fills up by itself while the guards do the heavy lifting, he decides to just AFK and watch them grind. Annoyed by the adventurer slacking off, one of the workers mutters that he's acting way too cocky just because he carried the fight. Hiding in the shadows, the player gives a smug smirk, giving zero cares about an NPC's complaints. Super comfortable with the setup, he jokes that exploiting the virtual NPC's labor feels absolutely amazing. Switching gears, the knight starts thinking it's super weird that those beasts targeted this exact spot on the map. Down below, one of the guards sounds worried, saying they're short a few bodies, making his buddy confused about how a corpse just despawns. Eavesdropping, the MC realizes this specific detail was a breadcrumb left by the devs to push the lore forward. He quickly pieces together that stealing bodies screams dark mage, meaning there's a big bad pulling the strings here. The system chimes that the loot phase is done right, as the guard captain tells everyone to fall back. With the wagons loaded up and the injured stabilized, the convoy finally starts the massive trek back to the city. Later on, back inside the guild, the old leader treats the adventurer with major respect, hyping up his clutch rescue. Keeping up his scary vibe, the Dark Knight demands the guild fork over a fair cash payout for all his sweating during that insane carry. Getting super offended, the grumpy leader claps back asking if the kid thinks he'd scam some random adventurer, telling him to chill. Smacking his cane hard on the floor, the old man announces he's still got one more super important thing to talk about. He then drops that there's a very specific quest, and he wants to hand it off to the rookie personally. The warrior gives him the floor with a dry nod, wondering what kind of rush job a guild master would toss his way right now. Cutting to the chase, the vet explains the new contract is straight-up demon hunting. The receptionist instantly cuts in, warning that the target for this raid is out in the notorious Northwest Forest. Sweating it, she reminds her boss that the zone was already claimed by another guild party, which makes the old man blow up, screaming that those noobs went AWOL. The old man rants that he refuses to wait around, and since he saw the MC's cracked skills himself, he decided to sub him in. Finding the stressed-out veteran who actually cares trope hilarious, the player puts on his cocky mask and asks if the job is just taking out the trash in those woods. The young worker sighs in defeat and gives the green light, promising to fast-track the paperwork since the boss is so stubborn about it. But she makes sure to drop that the guild still has to tank the cancellation fee for the MIA squad, making the leader scream about the red tape. Watching the whole circus, the young merchant from earlier clears his throat and guesses the swordsman will easily take the gig without flinching. Since it was getting late, the guy offers to escort the hero to an inn, suggesting they talk numbers on the way to save time. The next morning, the sun pops off, lighting up the city sky after a much-needed rest A guild carriage hits the dirt road, while the game engine updates the zone transition toward the sketchy northwest forest. Chilling inside the cramped cab, the Dark Knight sighs out of pure boredom, asking himself what kind of troll simulation this even is. Shifting his awkward legs around, he realizes with horror that the game's immersion actually simulates real muscle cramps from the lack of legroom. Dropping his chill persona for a sec, the player internally rages, complaining that a 10-hour ride with zero fast travel is absolute garbage game design. Seeing the rescued kid staring at him like an absolute fanboy from the front seat, the guy cools down and accepts this as the tiny consolation prize for his hardcore roleplay. Deciding to tank the discomfort, he reminds himself all this suffering will pay off once he gets his hands on the massive payout waiting for him. His mind drifts back to the morning at the inn where the client finalized the deal and said there was no rush, but a speedrun would be appreciated. Staying in character as the edgy merc, the adventurer bluntly asked what the actual cash drop was gonna be. The client dropped a base value of a whopping 700,000 coins, making the player internally lose his mind, even though he just gave a creepy, deadpan stare. Feeling the heat from the heavy silence, the young merchant panicked and threw in a 200,000 coin bonus out of pocket, completely catching the hero off guard. Confused by how easy the haggle was, the MC noticed his passive barter skill triggered on its own in the UI, even without him dropping points into it. He instantly wondered if it was a scripted event, or if the game literally lets you shake down NPCs just by giving them the silent treatment. Reading the long silence as total rejection, the client went into full panic mode and bumped the bonus to 300,000 coins, making the guy almost scream with joy in his head. Using his best arrogant villain voice, he took the deal telling them to just get the bags ready, patting himself on the back for acting his way to the bank. Way too hyped about the easy money, the swordsman dramatically announced he was heading out for the hunt right that second, leaving the client begging him to take at least one day off. Completely locked into his character, the hero declared he had zero intention of wasting a single tick while those demonic pests were still breathing. Snapping back to the present, the carriage bumps along the dirt road, getting closer and closer to the drop zone. Plotting to monopolize the virtual real estate market if the combat content dries up, the knight accidentally leaks a pretty sinister aura. The creepy vibe is broken when the little kid calls out shyly, asking if the giant dude is really an adventurer. Knowing his edgy persona would never claim such a basic title, he shoots it down, even while admitting to himself he only joined the guild for the easy farm. The kid drops his head looking bummed out by the cold answer, making the guy panic, thinking he went too hard on the arrogant acting. Trying to play it off naturally, the warrior softens up and says he does similar stuff, asking if the kid has anything specific on his mind. With his eyes sparkling with pure curiosity, the boy asks if he's ever seen the ocean, leaving the player amazed by how cute and realistic the AI is. Confidently confirming he's seen the sea, he hypes up the kid, who immediately asks what those faraway waters look like. As the carriage finally rolls up to the peaceful forest entrance, the adventurer uses his own exotic vibe to paint a picture of the beautiful blue waves. Still, he figures that all this chill, cozy travel is about to get rudely interrupted by something he could never see coming. The screech of heavy metal clashing echoes through the dark woods in a completely random and violent ambush. Gripping a nasty weapon, a red-haired knight glares at him with pure rage, accusing him of betraying the divine by hiding in a human skin suit. Yelling that she's gonna purify that thing in the name of the Almighty, she charges in, while the player internally facepalms for running into this exact type of religious fanatic enemy. Giving him zero time to block, the furious zealot sprints down the dark trail, totally ready to send him to the lobby right there. Caught totally lacking by the jump, the hero has to dash back fast to avoid getting one-tapped by the brutal strike. Right at that exact frame, a holographic system ping flashes, confirming his environmental hostility detection skill just popped. Relieved by the magic assist, He internally cheers about how easy it is, since he was stressing over how to find demons in this massive forest without a radar. The red warning flags a totally aggro target less than 10 meters away, making the guy look around completely clueless. Staring down the imposing warrior in front of him, he tries to process the glitchy situation while she screams that it's unforgivable for him to betray the faith right after taking a human form. Screaming passionately for her god, the knight jumps and spins her weapon to drop a crushing overhead smash. The redhead's eyes are full of a relentless, totally blind determination against the enemy she thinks is literal evil walking. Using all his physical stats, the player pulls his sword up horizontally to perfect parry the devastating spear hit at the very last frame. Wrapped in a heavy holy aura, the woman keeps pushing her massive weapon down on him, swearing she's gonna execute him with zero mercy. Feeling the insane pressure of the energy clash, the swordsman internally curses her busted strength stat, super worried his weapon's durability is about to get zeroed out. With an insane clutch effort, he manages to deflect the enemy's blade and shove her away, buying himself some crucial breathing room. A trail of red light violently slices the air as the warrior dashes back after the parry. Without dropping the combat pace, she instantly resets her stance, ready to keep spamming attacks on the supposed heretic. Staring down the fanatic with obvious disrespect, the Dark Knight calmly asks if she's part of the infamous Holy Order. Confirming his read, the redhead firmly replies she traveled all the way to the middle of nowhere just to permanently delete his existence. Facing the direct death threat, the player stays dead silent for a sec, reading the opponent's super aggro and reckless AI. He tauntingly asks why a holy member wants to ice him so badly, pointing out the order is supposed to preach mercy instead of acting like violent thugs ganking people on the street. The roast hits the knight's weak spot, and she spikes her magic power, absolutely tilted by a demon trying to preach about morals and violence. Keeping a safe distance, the guy just listens to her disgusted rants echoing through the quiet forest on loop. Totally lost by the heavy accusation, he points at his own chest, having no clue where she got the wild idea to label him a demon. Since no official quest popped up on the UI, the hero starts racking his brain trying to figure out what triggered this random encounter with the cleric class. Looking suspiciously at his own corrupted left arm, he tries to justify that he isn't carrying any unequipped cursed loot that would draw so much holy aggro. Then it clicks, his big brain finally realizes the actual reason behind this relentless griefing. Gripping his sealed gauntlet, he realizes with massive hype that this tense setup is actually an S-tier stage for him to flex his roleplay. The lore he wrote for his character is literally about hating having his arm possessed by a beast, constantly wondering if he even counts as a worthy human anymore. Obsessed with this golden opportunity to spice up his epic theater act, he looks up looking offended and demands the fanatic stop calling him a creature of darkness. Raising his massive blade like a boss, the swordsman dramatically recites a victory oath to the heavens to prove his flawless pride as an honorable knight. The redhead gets even more tilted by his fake acting, calling the warrior a gross heretic trying to copy the glorious drip of a real protector of the light. With zero patience left for dialogue, she fires off a devastating linear strike, ordering the pathetic faker to bow down to holy judgment once and for all. Blocking the heavy hit under a shower of sparks, the player ironically agrees in his head that her faker callout is spot on, since he never officially unlocked the knight title in the game. Locking in his plans, the Dark Knight unleashes a wave of energy and decides he literally has zero obligation to play fair. Getting pushed back, the warrior calls him a sneaky coward for trying to hide in the dark during a 1v1. Right then, the system drops the details on a skill that buffs the weapon with magic for a frontal demonic attribute nuke. The MC raises his blade, now glowing with a sick purple aura, popping his ultimate with max power. His opponent looks up absolutely shook when she realizes the sheer scale of the attack coming her way. With a massive boom, the dark energy crashes hard against the cleric's defenses. Keeping his troll energy up, he mocks the woman for hiding behind her shield like a little turtle. She snaps back, swearing she'll take his head as a drop item for everyone who suffered because of evil. A blinding holy light explodes around the knight as she announces her god is backing her up. The warrior has to shield his eyes to block the crazy flashbang. Realizing it's an AoE buff for both attack and defense, he admits to himself he's super jealous of that skill. Then he remembers his own starter move just buffed his weapon damage using class advantage multipliers. Riding the holy buff, the fanatic charges in hard, shoving her glowing shield straight at him. Reading the play, the guy notices she's trying to spread the light to debuff him, figuring her class is way too slow to land raw hits. Wrapping himself in shadows again, he flexes that he still holds the absolute speed advantage, even with the level gap. A relentless spam of strikes hits the glowing defense, making the player wonder what the point of attacking is if the shield just tanks everything. Seriously tilted by her tankiness, he clicks his tongue in frustration. Planting his feet, the guy realizes trying to crack that barrier with pure DPS is basically impossible. The knight dares him to face her head-on if he isn't ashamed in front of the divine. The warrior's eyes go cold and focused when he hears the cocky trash talk. Taking a heavy step forward, he confidently announces he'll do exactly what she asked. The heavy dark blade crashes into the glowing shield surface yet again. The cleric grinds her teeth, trying to tank the overwhelming knockback. With a super slick move, the knight steps right on the heavy shield to completely break the woman's posture. Exploiting the slow speed of her class, he jumps super high into the moonlight, leaving her totally stunned. Dropping down at crazy speed, the MC declares it's game over for the fanatic. A storm of crimson and black energy blasts into the ground, wiping out everything in its path. The woman tries to brace for the incoming wipe mechanic, struggling under the insane magical pressure. Flexing the superior mobility of his DPS class, the player lands smoothly right behind her. Leaking a terrifying aura, he demands she pay the price for talking so much trash. Suddenly, a new mystery voice echoes across the map, ordering flames to cook the enemy. A massive pillar of fire erupts right under the knight, who is mind-blown that a mage is out here in this dead zone. The newcomer casually walks up, roasting her teammate for struggling so much in the 1v1. An imposing feline archmage steps out of the blue magic, dropping a my bad for the late assist. Super relieved for the backup, the knight greets her teammate with serious hype. The MC freezes in pure disbelief when he tries to process the level of the mobs that just grouped up on him. Visualizing the game's skill trees, he realizes with horror that they both have third-tier class evolutions. Doing the math on this awful matchup, he realizes he has to deal with a perfect healer tank and ranged DPS combo. The player deeply regrets his RNG luck, remembering he's just a low-level scrub who barely made it past the tutorial. Standing in front of the two absolute units, he feels the massive level gap completely crushing his hopes. Totally salty, he roasts the devs for coding such an unfair system that hard focuses noobs. He compares his situation to throwing an egg at a brick wall, doubting there's any chance of pulling off a W here. Imagining the incoming pain without a setting to turn off virtual damage, he wonders if the game literally wants to torture him. The panic hits different when he realizes the physical pain is nothing compared to the brutal death penalty mechanic. But in the middle of this tilt, his big brain activates, and he stops to think if this busted encounter is scripted. Analyzing the impossible odds, the warrior forms a theory that this boss fight is literally designed to be an unwinnable cutscene. His gamer instincts tell him dying here is probably a forced tutorial to unlock the system's quality of life settings. Hyped like a guy who just cracked the code, he accepts he can take the L in peace, giving props to the insane realism. But his ego kicks in and he decides if a wipe is guaranteed, he's not gonna just AFK and surrender. Wrapped in an intimidating aura, he declares he's going down swinging and taunts the archmage for throwing AoEs near civilians. The religious fanatic screams, tilted by the heretic's arrogance, accusing him again of making deals with the dark side. Right at that tense second, a red ping pops up on the UI showing a new hostile target rushing the zone. The guy glances over, kinda confused, wondering if the game spawned even more busted mobs to guarantee his wipe. The cat mage instantly recognizes the evil vibe of a Medusa, while a massive crimson snake surrounds the warrior. Breaking the tension, the player gets internally salty that the NPC spoiled the monster's name before he could. The knight points her weapon in disgust, accusing the faker of spawning that giant demon to help him gank them. Going full sarcasm mode, the swordsman claps back that the holy flashbangs must have blinded her if she thinks that thing is his party member. Turning his sword toward the freaky snake, he promises to shut the knight up as soon as he dices up the new mob. The giant beast lunges with its fangs out, making the MC-100 sure this is a scripted story event. Cleanly dodging the lethal bite, he praises the devs for not softlocking players in an impossible trap. Striking his best ruthless slayer pose, the warrior announces he's gonna log this freaky creature out for good. The religious girl tries to rush in, blinded by rage and telling him to quit acting, but gets instantly body blocked by her mage buddy. With a super tense look, the archmage watches every single move the mystery man makes. The swordsman rushes the monster, remembering the base game's mechanic where you had to find the true form hidden in a swarm. Sweating pure confidence, he decides the standard strat is way too boring for a high APM veteran like him. Wasting zero time, the character charges a massive chunk of dark energy, prepping a raw DPS burst. Claiming the game's realism made the boss's weak spot way too obvious, he lands a deep slash on the giant armor. The brutal hit shreds the giant snake's structure, creating a perfect opening in the monster's magical flesh. Playing it risky and lethal, the guy shoves his own cursed arm right into the wound, aiming surgically for the hitbox where the heart should be. Yanking a tiny red snake out of the beast, he celebrates the crit while the giant shell dissolves. The MC figures trying to use his massive sword for such a precise click would just make him miss the core target. Boosted by his class stats, his corrupted arm squeezes the little critter with crushing force and zero hesitation. The demon's true form is held up to the sky, squirming uselessly against the adventurer's iron grip. A loud crack echoes when the evil core is completely deleted by the hands of the guy who commands the darkness. Walking casually through the leftover magic dust, the knight hypes up his own flawless run and gets ready for the next act of his performance. Stepping hard on the ground, the MC decides it's the perfect time to kick off his edgy demon hunter roleplay. The heavy thud of his boot echoes as he squashes the drops from the defeated creature. With a slick jump, he launches himself up holding the leftover loot. A dark crater marks the dirt as he lands doing a superhero pose. The knight and the archmage just stare in absolute shock at the massive warrior standing in front of them. Looking at his stained blade, he figures even a blind fanatic has some common sense when things get dicey. The archmage gives props to her partner for not trying to interrupt, saving herself from a fast trip to the lobby. Striking his scary pose, the swordsman asks if he should rip their mouths off as a reward for their trash talk. Instantly, the mage throws her hands up in surrender, apologizing for the aggro and begging him to hear her out. While the warrior is totally shook by this, her teammate argues that the demons were fighting each other, proving he's not a dark minion. Totally tilted, the fanatic demands to know how he isn't evil if he literally just spammed dark magic. Trying to cool things down, the mage explains the confusion makes sense, since beings like him are basically just myths in the academy. Internally, the player is having the time of his life, with the lore they're building and decides to stay quiet to enjoy the free cutscene. Taking the mic again, the magic user breaks down how a normal host loses their mind and turns into a zombie. But she hypes up the fact that this guy managed to suppress his inner beast and totally hijacked its power. Rejecting the theory, the knight insists that controlling that stuff without holy buffs is physically impossible. Super chill, the archmage claps back saying nothing is hardlocked in this world, just things that have a low drop rate of happening. To prove her point, she points out the walking proof that they were wrong is literally standing right there. Tired of just listening, the knight interrupts, demanding to know if they're done yapping right to his face. Riding the hype train to flex his acting, he pretends to be deeply offended at being compared to some brainless zombie mob. Realizing her massive mistake, the mage bows her head and promises to grant any wish as an official my bad. Staying perfectly in character, the warrior tests the limits, asking if they'd rip their own tongues out if he said so. Met with awkward silence, he tells them if they don't have the guts, they should save their breath instead of whining. Taking the edge to the max, he claims he'd love to string them up at the village gates, but doing that would make him an NPC monster. Turning his back like a drama queen, he orders the two to get out of his sight ASAP. On the inside, the guy is practically jumping for joy, feeling the same rush as killing it in an improv comedy show. Super hyped, he mentally thanks the virtual NPCs for reacting so perfectly to his edgy, rebellious hero vibe. With slow, heavy steps, the swordsman starts his walk through the dark woods. Suddenly, his brain reboots as he remembers he almost forgot to loot the epic drop from the boss. As soon as he picks up the mob's carcass, a stressed voice tells him to hold up a sec. Annoyed, the adventurer wonders if the duo is really gonna have the nerve to complain about him taking his own loot. The fanatic knight speaks up, asking him to please listen to her for a minute. The guy stops dead in his tracks, hyped that this might trigger a brand new questline. Plot twist, the warrior actually confesses she needs to apologize for jumping the gun. Looking over his shoulder, he listens to the woman admit that any excuse would just sound like a cheap cope for her sneaky attack. Super surprised, the player remembers this character archetype usually stays stubborn till the end just to protect their ego. Bowing deeply to show respect, she begs him to accept her apology, making the guy feel awkward about so much virtual formality. The cleric promises to pay whatever cash penalty he wants, making the hero guess this is the classic recruit companion event. But he instantly drops the idea, figuring that partying up would totally ruin his lone wolf aesthetic. Keeping up the attitude, the Dark Knight sharply replies he doesn't care at all about her fake apologies. Losing her cool again, the cleric tries to argue she's being legit, but the mage tells her to chill. The cat lady reminds her they need to get back fast to turn in the quest and confirm the zone is cleared. Feeling the weight of her misplay, the knight looks down and agrees with her teammate looking totally defeated. Getting her tough posture back, she turns around and tells her partner they need to rush because it's getting late. Without looking back, the two slowly fade into the thick fog of the creepy forest. With the path clear, the swordsman gets back to his massive walk to the city. But then soft footsteps start echoing right behind him on the dirt path. Glancing over his shoulder, he gets super confused by this random plot twist. Absolutely salty, the guy asks himself why the heck these two women are tailing him so closely. Checking his own floating UI map, he confirms he's on the right path, wondering if they're stream sniping his minim. Right behind him, the warrior complains about not getting the kill, while the mage says the XP was worth it, driving the player crazy with the tailing. Thinking he might have skipped a crucial dialogue prompt, he decides to test the NPC's AI by demanding they listen to him. Stopping in the middle of the road, he gives a death glare and asks if his words are some kind of joke to them. Super polite, the archmage says sorry again, swearing they didn't mean to grief him. Totally chill, she flexes a tracking spell and explains they're literally just heading to the same waypoint. The MC is shook, realizing he just made a fool of himself thinking NPCs had built-in GPS too. Feeling totally awkward, he speeds up, deciding to ditch them as fast as humanly possible. Seeing the guy go off the safe path, the fanatic yells a warning that the woods are way too buggy and dangerous at night. Ignoring the ping, he walks right past, flexing that danger is only for noobs, while internally begging them to let him game in peace. Actually worried, the cleric insists that wandering around in the pitch-black solo is a guaranteed trip to the lobby. Watching the warrior vanish into the dark, the knight wonders if letting him roam free is a smart strat. She's clearly stressed, claiming that if someone that op loses control to the beast, the server is doomed. Rubbing her chin, the magic user admits this is her first time seeing such a unique build, crossing her fingers he doesn't throw. Squeezing her hands, the knight mutters that RNG usually hands out way worse luck than blind hope. Trying to lighten the mood, the archmage drops the bomb that she sneakily stuck a tracking debuff on the guy to spectate him from afar. In the dead silence of the spooky trees, a quiet prayer asks for some RNG divine protection for his solo run. Up above, the full moon highlights dozens of crows flying like crazy through the thick woods. Far away from the danger zone, the city is completely AFK, but the guild building is still online with the lights on. Walking with heavy steps, the swordsman finally reaches the guild's front door. Inside, the friendly worker is sweeping the floor and says without looking that the window to turn in quests is closed. But when she looks up, the girl gasps and steps back like she just saw a ghost. Standing in the doorway leaking a dark, boss-level aura, he just stares her down. A loud thud echoes as the adventurer tosses a heavy loot bag on the floor, demanding she appraise the drops. Panicking and backing up behind the counter, the girl asks how on earth he speedrun the quest that fast. Untying the bag with the grumpy leader right behind her, her eyes pop out seeing the ultra-rare mob drops he brought back. Absolutely mind-blown, the guild worker drops her broom and stutters, trying to confirm if those mats are really what she thinks they are. She leans in shocked, asking if he actually went into the woods and soloed the boss in just 2 days, while the warrior sighs, exhausted, thinking she has zero clue about the absolute nightmare he just lived through. His mind flashes back to last night, remembering when he confidently ditched the helpers and started his solo trek through the dark woods. But reality hit him like a truck right after, because he realized the carriage ride took 8 hours just to get him out of the aggro zone. Walking endlessly through the dark map, the guy rants that this is just a game and they shouldn't force players to walk the whole map. Totally lost, he spent hours wandering the virtual zones hoping he hit the right waypoint, only to find out he was running in circles. Exhausted on the dirt road, the player trashes the lack of fast travel options, salty that he literally spent a whole day walking in real time. Trying to AFK a bit on the forest floor, he gave up on camping because the bugs and the hyper-realistic ecosystem wouldn't stop griefing him. When the system UI finally pinged his arrival at the trading post, the knight admits he almost cried tears of joy for escaping that green hell. Back at the guild, the receptionist checks the looted mats and confirms the boss was actually a Medusa, promising they'll keep the zone on lockdown. The quest complete banner flashes in the air, with the worker promising to sort out the payout by morning, while the guy gets dizzy from how drained he is. Seeing the hero's HP basically at 0, the girl tells him to log off at an inn, making him realize he would have rage quit the quest if he hadn't spent so much on his VR. Right then, the young merchant pops into the lobby, super shocked by the speedrun, and happily offers to walk him to the inn. Walking through the fancy hallways, the swordsman notices the client seems to get more hyped and smiley every time they interact. The client eagerly asks what kind of boss he fought in the woods, but gets a dry reply that evil mobs aren't fun trivia. Spooked by the cold, edgy answer, the kid shrinks back and instantly apologizes for acting like a noob. Hitting the busy city street, the player feels bad for the kid's sad face and decides he'll drop him a fat tip once he gets his official payout. Finally chilling in his private room, the adventurer flops on the bed, seriously debating if he should just uninstall this stress simulator. With his stamina bar completely depleted, he tries to figure out how a simple UI warning makes him feel so dead in real life. Staring at the floating rest prompt, the knight decides to AFK for a bit before making the final call on quitting the game. Without thinking twice, he reaches out and sets the menu timer to sleep for exactly 6 straight hours. The night sky shines peacefully over the quiet city, showing that time is fast-forwarding while he rests. Soft moonlight sneaks into the dark room through the wooden window, keeping the vibe perfectly quiet and cozy. Suddenly, heavy boots sneakily step on the floorboards, trying not to pull any aggro. A sketchy figure carefully opens the door and spots the hero totally vulnerable on the bed. Setting up a cheap shot in the dead of night, the intruder pulls a sharp dagger from his belt with a smooth motion. With pure intent to grief, the random guy raises the weapon right over the sleeping warrior's chest. At that exact critical frame, a red alarm blares warning of an incoming threat, making the player's eyes snap open on pure survival instinct. Reacting purely on defense, the guy's fast hand grabs his own weapon that was chilling right next to him. With a brutal and precise parry, the swordsman blocks the sneaky dagger using his heavy metal hilt, throwing massive sparks from the clash. Shoving the blade back at the shocked ganker, the player trashes the bandit's guts, who talks trash back while desperately trying not to get skewered. With a violent push, the adventurer knocks the enemy back, raging that his detection skill is total garbage for only pinging when the danger is already in his face. The thief stumbles back, totally dizzy from the insane strength stat of this random guest. Using the safe distance, the hero pulls out his actual black sword, making the blade glow dangerously in the moonlight. A fast, dark slash rips through the room, tagging the intruder's arm and making him scream in pain. The mugger instantly backs off, begging for his life, crying that he just wanted to loot the inn's coin purse. Keeping up the scary act, the knight tells him to drop the weapon, while thinking it's dumb to play the good guy guard when his character is so edgy. The sound of metal clanks on the wooden floor as the pointy stick drops to signal he's totally surrendering. With his hands up, the bandit keeps begging, but the swordsman sarcastically asks since when do coin purses drop from crushed skulls. With zero patience for cutscenes, the knight agrees out loud with his own joke and lands a critical hit to the back of the coward's neck. The heavy strike catches the mugger totally off guard, knocking the wind out of him in one frame. With his nervous system short-circuiting, the guy coughs hard while his screen goes black instantly. The thief hits the floor, and the hero mocks their nerve for thinking they could 1v1 him with such trash starter gear. Facepalming with a mix of rage and sleepiness, the guy complains about dealing with random encounters right when his stamina is basically zero. Staring at the wrecked room near the door, the warrior thinks about the game mechanics, guessing this random event is tied to the main lore. Moving at crazy speed, the inn worker shows up at the door and her eyes pop out seeing the busted floorboards. Absolutely shocked by the random PvP violence, she covers her mouth and lets out a scream. Trying to cool the aggro, the warrior apologizes for losing his temper and says he just needs a few hours of AFK sleep. Instead of chilling out, the girl goes into full panic mode and shrieks, leaving the guy totally confused by her dramatic AI. She screams accusing him of straight-up murder, making him wonder if her character model is blind since the downed bandit is clearly still breathing. The adventurer's stress hits the ceiling when the system UI flashes red again, warning of another mob rushing him. Busting the door wide open, the fanatic knight storms in screaming, accusing the warrior of committing a major crime while she wasn't looking. Blinded by holy rage, she points a finger swearing she was right all along not to trust a monster pretending to be human. Without waiting for dialogue options, the cleric lunges in, dropping a massive attack with her glowing holy mace. Fast as ever, the swordsman raises his dark blade in time to perfect block the heavy hit, sliding backward from the raw knockback. Staring the enemy down looking completely bored, he curses the game's writers for always dropping this annoying NPC in the worst possible moments. The fanatic keeps her eyes locked with blind hate, ready to permabin the dangerous heretic once and for all. With a quick firm shove, they break the clash, getting some breathing room in the tiny inn room. Throwing on his villain mask with a smile, the hero threatens his stalker, internally admitting he loves this trigger event for getting him back into the roleplay zone. The player's HUD proudly displays the custom macro words he set up to trigger auto battles whenever he gets hit with holy insults. Validating his setup, the knight starts spamming every single registered keyword in a blind rage. Telling him to shut up, she rushes in calling him filthy trash for stealing a human skin while the guy smirks, loving the system's flawless response. Diving headfirst into the drama, the swordsman steps back and preps his heavy blade to counterattack with max DPS. The fighter's eyes are full of relentless hate, hard-locked on executing her target with zero mercy. Leaking a cold, deadly aura, the knight drops a deep voice line saying the enemy is way too eager for a fast trip to the lobby. Reaching out a free hand glowing with dark magic, he tells the scared NPCs to back up if they don't want to get caught in the AoE wipe. His eye glows with an insanely overpowering demonic vibe, proving he's 100 in control of this boss phase. Popping his raw dark ultimate, the hero dashes forward screaming the name of his busted special move. Suddenly, glowing magic chains lock his character model in place, canceling his dash, while a voice echoes begging him to stop right now. He quickly scans the debuff, recognizing it as a classic crowd control spell meant to root enemies. The imposing cat archmage finally steps into the room asking everyone to chill, and the player smiles knowing she wouldn't miss a scripted event. Ignoring her teammate, the fanatic screams, swearing she'll rip his jaw and tongue out to mute him permanently. The magic user stands right in the middle of the standoff, totally ignoring the warrior's complaints about the CC. The light bindings keep glowing super bright around the black sword, struggling to tank the insane stats coming off the enchanted weapon. With a massive burst of raw DPS energy, the adventurer shatters the magic chains using pure strength, proving CC spells can't hold him. The fanatic is totally stun-locked, having zero reaction to that ridiculous flex of raw strength. With an ear-splitting crack, the leftover crowd control magic shatters into thousands of glowing pixels. Hiding behind the wrecked furniture, the cowardly mugger shakes like a leaf, terrified he's about to get sent to the lobby. The veteran archmage is also totally shook, unable to process the broken stats she just saw. Flexing a terrifying aura, the massive black sword stays glued to the dark warrior's hands. The vibe in the cramped-in room gets insanely heavy as the adventurer stares down the intruders. Sweating bullets, the cleric wonders how it's even possible for someone to break a high-tier spell that easily. Clearly tilted that his AFK time got ruined, the hero just keeps his stance closed and edgy. On the inside, the player agrees this whole setup is wild, remembering super specific meta details from the base game. He remembers that this exact root spell was the absolute terror of the forums, with everyone crying for the devs to nerf it. Trying to cool the aggro, the mage suggests it's just a misunderstanding, but the knight screams that she literally saw a crime happen. The archmage immediately scolds her teammate, asking if her blind rage made her miss the super obvious clues on the floor. She tells the cleric to actually check the room and confirm if the swordsman really deleted anyone. Glancing at the corner, the Inquisitor finally spots the bandit on the floor, crying and calling the MC a monster. Totally embarrassed after realizing her massive throw, the fanatic stutters, confirming the victim is still breathing. Still processing her own cringe, the woman mumbles that the mugger is safe. Throwing on his best cocky posture, the hero confirms it, flexing that he wanted to finish the job but decided to hold back. Super politely, the mage asks the warrior to explain what actually went down in that wrecked room. Pointing at the hallway full of NPCs freaking out over the noise, she suggests they clear things up fast to drop the crowd's aggro. With zero patience for the drama, the swordsman points his blade at the intruder and orders him to confess his crimes right in front of everyone. The adventurer's heavy footsteps stomp on the wooden floor as he walks up looking like a final boss. Pressured by the terrifying aura, the thief panics and confesses through tears that he just wanted to loot the guest's gold. The cleric connects the dots and realizes the criminal saw the errand boy get a fat tip earlier. Seeing the misunderstanding finally cleared up, the player lets out a massive sigh of relief internally. Keeping up the roleplay of an offended VIP, he tells them to buff the inn's security and decides to log out of there instantly. Walking down the night street, the guy celebrates how broken it is to just stash all his loot in his magic inventory. His steps get faster and heavier on the dark cobblestone. Suddenly he stops dead in his tracks, getting a weird feeling of déjà vu about those two mystery. Realizing they're tailing him again, the warrior snaps around demanding they explain themselves. With a sharp, super suspicious look, he decides to actually inspect the duo's character models this time. The knight gulps and steps back, clearly stressed by getting targeted. A spark of recognition hits the player's eye when the lore finally clicks in his big brain. Scanning the woman's full skin, he notices the exclusive logos of the high-tier cleric uniform. Zooming in on the cleric's face, the hero kicks himself for not realizing who he was dealing with sooner. Checking out her iconic hair, he spots the classic anime style that always screams tragic backstory. Then her bright eye color seals the deal on the wiki stats he knew by heart. Totally shook, the hero realizes she's a massive, plot-essential character for the healer class. Noticing the super tense vibe, the archmage tries to step in, asking to talk things out like adults. Shifting focus to her partner, the guy realizes the situation is way more busted than he thought. He instantly recognizes the unique bloodline of the most iconic magic faction in this fantasy universe. Scratching his chin, the player wonders why the system is hard forcing him to interact with the main cast. Standing in the empty street, the duo waits in silence while his brain overclocks trying to plot his next move. Super salty, he hates the idea of partying up with main characters who could totally ruin his solo, edgy roleplay. Deciding to test the game's sandbox freedom, he strikes a cocky villain pose and tells them to zip it. The knight loses all her tough guy act instantly, stuttering in panic that she just wanted to say sorry for the massive screw-up. Ignoring the apology, the swordsman yanks his dark blade from its sheath with a lethal, lightning-fast animation. Spooked by the instant aggro, the cleric drops to her knees on the cold stone floor in total submission. Feeling guilty for throwing so hard, she looks up and offers her own HP bar as payment for the unfair toxicity. The player freezes, completely mind-blown by the NPC's crazy extreme reaction. A heavy, awkward silence takes over the dead street while the fanatic waits for her band hammer. Internally, the guy starts sweating, seriously questioning the AI's mental state. Panicking, he trashes the game's absurd script, telling himself that being a theater kid doesn't mean he wants to be a literal executioner. Shooting a death glare at the Archmage, he tries to pass the blame for this psychotic sacrifice play. The veteran magic user also looks super stressed, realizing the massive mess her intense partner just caused. The player mentally begs the mage to interrupt ASAP, knowing that canceling his attack animation now would totally ruin his ruthless persona. Understanding how bad this is, the old mage finally takes a shaky step forward to intervene. Forcing a fake cough, she desperately tries to break the lethal tension of this weird random encounter. The adventurer locks onto the interruption, keeping his dark, dangerous act going strong. With a soft voice, the Archmage begs the warrior to show just a little bit of chill and patience with them. Trying to carry her noob teammate, she offers to tank all the blame for the misunderstanding, asking to take the hit instead of the kid. Horrified that her carry is about to sacrifice herself, the cleric screams against the terrible idea. Even on her knees, the knight insists on taking 100 of the blame for her own rushed misplays. Absolutely drained by the endless NPC drama, the player decides to fix the bug his own chaotic way. Sighing quietly from exhaustion, he grips his sword, admitting the cutscene went totally off the rails. Glowing with a busted, destructive spiritual energy, he fully unsheathes the massive blade to announce his final call. Dropping a terrifying ultimatum, the guy walks up slowly, making it clear they pulled this aggro on themselves. Accepting her game over screen without fighting back, the fanatic just closes her eyes, ready for the final blow. Without dropping a single frame of his animation, the swordsman swings the heavy weapon in a brutal arc right at the cleric's head. The dark metal tears through the air, creating a deadly, oppressive sound effect in the quiet night. Unable to watch the scripted tragedy, the mage just looks away in absolute despair. Feeling nothing but a sharp breeze graze her skin, the knight reacts totally confused by the plot twist. Still frozen in her surrender pose, she spots the warrior walking away, casually putting his weapon away. A tiny piece of clipped hair gently floats down to the stone floor, proving his hitbox accuracy was pixel perfect. The cleric is stun-locked by the silent mercy from the ruthless boss. Having zero clue what that honorable flex meant, the woman yells in panic, asking why she wasn't sent to the lobby. The MC just thinks to himself that he saved her HP while keeping his genius roleplay totally flawless. In his head, he remembers his IRL sister was the exact same age and also mained a heavy weapon. The Archmage sighs in relief, clearly blown away that he actually let it slide so peacefully. Right then, the hero tells the knight to look at her clipped hair and learn to control her trash talk from now on. Walking away, he drops a scary warning that there won't be a second chance for mercy next time. The mage calls out to her shocked partner, while the adventurer mentally celebrates fixing that cursed haircut. Walking away feeling like a winner, the guy figures those NPCs are programmed to follow him anyway. Super hyped about the lore, he wonders what massive scripted event he's gonna trigger next. Standing in the dark street, the knight mutters her ally's name, still buffering over the crazy plot twist. She remembers that this warrior is supposed to be getting mind-controlled by a dark, dangerous beast 24/7. Gripping her weapon, the cleric guesses the guy went through absolute hell against those mobs in his backstory. According to her blind logic, the rage he needs to have that much mental fortitude must be completely off the charts. The Archmage agrees, asking how he managed to just walk away when he had so much power and reason to counter. With a super chill voice, the old mage figures the only logical answer is that he just has insane patience for noobs. They both genuinely believe the swordsman's willpower is so goated that he even overpowers the pure evil inside him. The fanatic mutters, super impressed by the lone warrior's supposedly unshakable, massive determination. Dropping to the floor again, she admits with her head down that she still needs to learn the absolute basics about being a good person. Trying to gently comfort her, her partner reminds her that her run through this chaotic world is just starting. Suddenly, the knight looks up, screaming full of energy that she just figured out something game-changing for their quest. Holding her clipped hair, she declares that the mystery man desperately needs to join their party. The cleric's eyes get a crazy, stubborn glow, determined to complete this brand new side quest she just made up. Faced with that massive mood swing, the cat mage is left totally speechless for a second. Right after, the sorceress just closes her eyes and sighs, super tired of her young partner's hyperactive A. Under the chill moonlight, the two finally get back on the long road through the empty city to find a save point. The game UI flashes a pop-up saying there are only 2 days left before the current simulation shuts down. The next morning, a hot, bright sun lights up the peaceful roofs of the massive trading hub. NPCs start spawning back outside a different inn, far from the messy PvP zone of last night. The main lobby is already packed with adventurers eating and chatting it up. At a table in the back, the hero aggressively stabs a juicy piece of meat to fix his hunger meter. Chewing his heavy breakfast, the swordsman looks completely bored and morning cranky. The reason for his tilt becomes obvious when the female duo randomly spawns right behind his chair. Internally, the guy celebrates their perfect timing, figuring the NPCs went on cooldown on purpose. Keeping up the edgy, heartless act, he harshly asks if they're deaf and missed his warning from before. The archmage waves her hands asking him to chill, swearing they aren't here to grief or scam him. Slamming the table and jumping up, the knight cuts her off, saying he doesn't want to hear another word. Looking away with max disrespect, he claims that just having them in the lobby is already a massive headache. Scraping together whatever courage she has left, the cleric awkwardly tries to start a conversation. Yelling for the whole tavern to hear, she announces she traveled all the way there just to learn about tolerance and forgiveness from him. The fanatic turns beet red and starts panting after screaming that in the middle of the quiet room. Totally blindsided by the crazy request, the adventurer tilts his head, having zero clue what's happening. Panicking internally, he wonders if he soft-locked the game's AI by rejecting the main story routes too many times. Getting her cool back, the woman explains she was taught to have compassion but totally threw when it mattered. She hypes up how the guy's behavior was top tier, sparing her life even after she spammed toxic attacks at him. Glowing with a super bright spiritual aura, the knight swears she saw the true path of light in him. The swordsman facepalms, dying of cringe from that overly dramatic, heroic speech. An imaginary explosion of pure hype hits the guy's brain like a runaway freight train. He realizes amazed that this NPC checks literally every single box for his favorite virtual waifu archetype. A nostalgic flashback hits him, remembering that devoted healers were always his main pick in games. Completely charmed by the woman's pure innocence, he wants to hug her right there in the crowded tavern. But he takes a deep breath and bottles up the hype so he doesn't ruin his Dark Knight drip. Noticing the heavy silence dragging on, the cleric asks, shaking with fear, if she accidentally disrespected him. The player barely hides his internal joy, finding all that goofy insecurity super cute. Sighing like a drama major, the warrior coldly claps back that her attempt to ruin his day was actually kinda interesting. The mage steps in, asking him to ignore the rookie's rambling and focus on the actual quest. Turning his scary aura up to max, he cuts the chatter by screaming the name of a notorious final boss. The archmage's eyes pop out, asking if he'd really skip the raid against that supreme demon just because he hates the guild. The hero's visible eye glows with crazy intensity as he snags that god-tier info drop. Slowly lowering his dark blade, he mutters calmly that he finally gets where this main quest is going. Staring the duo down dead serious, the knight demands to know every single detail about that cursed boss. The two women exchange looks in dead silence, relieved they finally got the guy to pay attention. Seeing his sudden, edgy mood swing, the duo starts carefully analyzing the adventurer's intense reaction. Looking at his cold, sharp glare, they firmly conclude that this guy harbors a lethal grudge against the dark side. The tension in the room spikes, as the allies realize any lie told right now equals an instant game over. Despite the obvious risk of getting deleted, the cleric clenches her fists without showing a single frame of hesitation. The woman's green eyes overflow with the belief that sacrificing herself is totally worth it for the server's greater good. They huddle up at the table to talk, with the knight internally accepting she'd deserve a permaban if she tried to scam him. On the inside, the player enjoys his food super hyped, barely believing he unlocked the final arc so early in the run. Totally ecstatic about the epic storyline, he praises how flawlessly his roleplay session is going. The lore dumps that the Inquisitors act as the ruthless holy judges for the gods of this universe. In their lore, they're the ultimate weapons deployed to carry out server admin orders straight to the battlefield. Back to the tense chat, the archmage reveals that the rookie ditching her cozy temple early actually has a huge lore reason. She explains the dedicated girl got a direct quest from the heavens in the form of an absolute holy vision. The fanatic takes the mic proudly, confessing the devsa godscos her to wipe that evil off them. Looking seriously worried, the cleric admits the prophecy requires high-tier party members to actually clear the raid. Wrapping up the lore dump, she says recruiting the old sorceress was just step one of this co-op run. The archmage explains that's exactly why they came back to track him down, even knowing he'd hate the ping. The mage drops that the young inquisitor thought he'd be chill about it, making the cleric cough awkwardly to hide her cringe. Internally, the MC thinks it's way too cute that she got baited so easily, struggling hard not to break character and smile. But then things get weird as he remembers that in the vanilla game, the player is the one who gets the divine cutscene. Totally shook, the hero wonders if the remake devs completely swapped the main storyline to focus on the cleric class. Trying to break the awkward silence, the old mage calls him a friend with a slightly nervous voice. Right after, she drops the direct party invite for him to join their hardcore raid to take down the Demon King. At that exact second, the shiny system UI pops up in front of the swordsman, officially confirming the start of the main questline. With a confident smirk, the magic user hypes up the adventurer's stats, saying he's famous for never dodging a dark-type boss fight. Keeping it serious, she promises that deleting the main boss will make all the other mobs despawn from the server forever. Reading the room, the warrior just listens silently, processing that the religious fanatic is basically the main protagonist now. To prove they aren't trolling, the sorceress suggests he tag along to the main hub as a vibe check. The mage doubles down that any high-ranking NPC there will validate the holy quest the girl got from the sky. The lobby goes dead quiet as the duo waits on the edge of their seats for the guy's final yes or no. Putting on his best mystery man act, the player mentally scrolls through dialogue options so he doesn't throw his roleplay. Using a deep, scary voice, the knight accepts the party invite, warning them they better not be lying. The system instantly registers the two NPCs as new party members, giving the cleric a massive smile. The UI updates the quest tracker, dropping the next waypoints the squad needs to hit. Next day, the squad's carriage is already cruising through the packed streets of the giant trading hub. As soon as the party was formed, the adventurer speedrun getting them out of the city without wasting a frame. On the way out, the innkeeper begged for mercy, and some random NPCs even tried to hand out juicy side quests. Despite the easy XP, the player cold-shouldered everyone to keep his Persona 100 focused on the main storyline. But during the ride, something starts seriously messing with the lone warrior's focus. Without knowing why, he notices the young inquisitor is constantly staring at him with huge, fanboy eyes. All that exaggerated hype since they partied up leaves the guy sweating bullets and super uncomfortable with the spotlight. He searches his memory for any good deed he did, but only remembers spamming toxic voice lines at her. Convinced his rep with her was rock bottom, the hero gets jump-scared when a friendship-level pop-up appears on screen. The tooltip explains that party members react based on dialogue choices, a feature that unlocked the second they teamed up. Used to NPCs hating him because of his edgy build, he remembers warning them he wouldn't treat them like actual teammates. Confused by the girl's positive vibes, he figures the game must hardcode a high friendship stat early on to carry noobs. At the end of the day, the swordsman secretly admits the partner's innocent. Hyped-up energy is way too cute to ignore. Totally melted by the NPC's charm, he even drafts a cute nickname for her in his head. The guy thinks it's wild how someone with such busted DPS can have such a sweet, passionate personality. On the other side, the archmage watches them interact with a soft smile, feeling like a proud gaming mom. Killing the chill vibe in the cab, the old mage tags the warrior, switching to a way more serious, try-hard tone. The sorceress asks if the guy has any questions about the lore, or where exactly their fast travel point is. Thinking like a min-maxer, he knows asking is pointless since the game only unlocks the next zone when the script says so. Keeping his roleplay sharp, he warns them that if this is a scam, hell wipe them both right there, so the waypoint doesn't matter. The hero aggressively demands they call out any aggro before it hits, if they don't want a game over. Instead of getting tilted, the archmage giggles softly, saying all those threats just sound like a big flex of trust. The adventurer looks away annoyed, amazed at how these NPCs can spin his toxicity into a positive buff. The narrator cuts in, saying the carriage is heading to a distant temple that threw up an SOS for an urgent cleanse. The fanatic drops a lore speech about how carrying the noobs there is the ultimate duty of any holy main. With zero patience for endless lore dumping, the warrior cuts her off, saying he doesn't care about the guild's motives. Purely focused on what drops XP, he demands to know the mob types and the exact spawn count they're dealing with. The girl nervously replies they only got the initial ping, making the swordsman salty about the system's garbage quest info. When the quest log updates, the player gets confused seeing the objective swap to a random side event. Shrugging it off, he accepts the detour, figuring any random encounter is just free XP and loot anyway. The guy calculates his IRL playtime left, hoping his VR dive time is enough to full clear the quest. Watching the horses crawl down the dirt road, the adventurer complains about the precious ticks they're wasting in transit. Tired of staring at the carriage roof, he decides to use the dead time on the road to AFK and rest his breath. Closing his eyes and trusting the code, he's 100% sure his party will ping him the second they hit the load zone. While the hero sleeps, the story flashes back to a secret chat that went down at the inn last night. That tense night, the young cleric was chilling alone in a dark room, deep thinking about her own toxic gameplay. The old mage knocks asking to come in and gets a super chill, respectful welcome from the stressed rookie. Looking dead serious, the veteran sorceress announces they need to have a serious debrief about what happened. The cat lady scolds her hard, asking if the kid realizes how hard she threw by offering her HP bar like that. She reminds the rookie that the whole holy raid depends completely on her staying alive until the final boss. With a choked-up voice, the knight admits she totally misplayed, confessing her rushed move almost ruined the whole run. Despite the guilt, the rookie looks up determined, arguing a ban would be fair since she almost PK'd an innocent player. The mentor drops some wisdom, saying blind justice is just disguised griefing, and whoever uses it needs crazy trigger discipline. The cleric listens quietly, recognizing those old words as one of the top-tier rules of her faction's. Gripping her hands, the girl panics thinking about how many other NPCs she might accidentally wipe later because she's a noob. Super sad, the rookie admits she feels like she doesn't deserve the hero tag since she failed the basic tutorial on mercy. Staring at her clipped hair, she believes the swordsman gave her a respawn to go find the true path of light. Wrapped in a hopeful aura, the fanatic declares the warrior's move put her on the right track to carry her quest. In the kid's hyped-up mind, the toxic player is actually a god-tier saint chosen to spread peace servers wide. She goes as far as wondering if the edgy, violent merc is actually a holy GM playing on a Smurf account. Running on max faith, the knight drops a legit prayer asking the devs to buff her new spiritual master with good sleep. Back to the present, the squad's ride drags on at a super boring pace down the dirt road under a blazing sun. After what felt like ages, the rustic roofs of the remote village finally render on the green horizon. The MC wakes up looking absolutely tilted, realizing the useless travel sequence ate 3 IRL days of his playtime. Walking the village streets at night, the adventurer roasts the devs for coding such a slow, punishing transit system. Desperate, he cries over dropping big bucks on VR fluid just to spend hours getting tossed around in a wagon. With a psycho look in his eyes, the player decides to channel all his rage into speedrunning the quest to make up for the lost time. It all starts with the old mage pointing out the trip took forever and suggesting they push straight to the temple. But the swordsman is already way ahead, power walking, leaving the Inquisitor confused about when he got so far. She sprints after him in a panic, begging the Dark Knight to hold up for a sec. Far behind, the Archmage sighs, exhausted, grumbling that it's too hard for an old lady to keep up with this tryhard pace. The vibe gets a bit heavier as the wise mage thinks quietly while walking. She admits to herself she's getting a super weird bad vibe and has no idea why. Up in the night sky, a flock of crows flies around going crazy, hyping up the creepy atmosphere of the zone. The massive temple building stands tall in the middle of the moonlit night. Soon enough, the heavy sound of the squad's boots rings through the halls of the holy site. The mage's bad feeling becomes real the second the warrior has to pull his sword right at the spawn point. A squad of temple guards swarms the guy instantly, aiming their weapons and screaming that he's a dark mob. Without missing a beat, the young cleric dashes in front of the MC to body block the incoming aggro. Flexing a bright holy aura, she yells at the guards to listen, swearing the guy isn't an enemy NPC. One of the guards backs off a bit, surprised by the mark on her hand, wondering if that's the legit hero badge. The fanatic pounds her chest and puts her holy title on the line to prove her partner is just a victim, not an evil minion. The guards keep whispering suspiciously about his dark aura, arguing the rookie hero is too low-level to make that call. Seeing them act so stubborn, the Archmage staff starts glowing like crazy. She slams her weapon into the floor with insane force, dropping a blue ow-ee wave that echoes through the whole lobby. Taking charge of the lobby, the wise mage steps up and demands everyone mute their mics instantly. With a totally boss-level stance, she asks the guards if they missed the hero's direct order to stand down. Pressured by the old sorceress's heavy aura, the guys exchange nervous looks. Totally intimidated, they finally drop the PvP and lower their spears, agreeing to respect the server admin's call. The cleric sighs in relief as the aggro drops, and a priest asks to escort the party inside peacefully. Riding the chill wave, the mage apologizes to the swordsman, begging him to just tolerate the NPC's bad AI for a bit. Internally, the player is popping off, loving being part of this classic misunderstood badass trope, claiming he would have wiped them if she hadn't stepped in. Totally clueless about his internal hype, the wise woman tells him to come in, finding it super cute how he slow walks to look cautious. Keeping his acting tense, the hero shoots a cold, mysterious look to maintain his edgy rep. As he walks through the giant double doors, he mentally complains about his stamina draining, thinking the game's physics are way too realistic. The small squad follows the priest through the temple's insane hallways, checking out the god-tier architecture in the dark. Soon they hit a massive, fully decorated conference room, ready to get the quest briefing on the village's crisis. Sitting at the table, the local bishop announces they've yapped enough about the server issues hitting the zone. Since it's late, the priest suggests the party logs off in the guest rooms, but the adventurer just glares at him, bored out of his mind. The guy even offers to send food to their rooms, which makes the player instantly guess the NPC is just trying to softlock them in there. He wonders if he's being paranoid, but figures it makes total sense to be suspicious after the toxic welcome at the gate. Sick of the endless political dialogue skipping, the guy stands up, feeling like this fake hospitality is draining his patience. Going full rogue, he rejects the free-in offer with zero manners whatsoever. The warrior announces he'd rather sleep on the pavement than crash in a nest full of fakers, leaving the head priest totally speechless. Exactly then, a quest pop-up floats in, telling him to track the beast's footprints in town, completely reviving the hunter's hype. He turns his back and walks out without dropping any lore explanations, while the cleric yells for him, totally stressing out. Sprinting after her party leader, the fanatic reaches out, begging him to wait just one more second. Without thinking about her hitbox, the girl ends up grabbing the swordsman's armored arm to try and cancel his walk animation. With an aggressive reflex, the guy smacks her hand away with a harsh, rejective animation. Wrapped in a heavy red aura, he uses a cold voice line to demand she never touch him like that again. The rookie feels the absolute weight of the rejection and shrinks back, shakily apologizing for the misplay. Still confused by the sudden aggro, she asks, super worried, where he plans on going at this hour. The Dark Knight turns his head and claps back that it's obvious, promising to permadelete the target right now. He walks down the wide hallway, internally cheering that skipping their dramatic cutscenes will make his speedrun way faster. Getting her brave face back, the hero ignores his toxicity and firmly announces she's tagging along for the raid. Watching quietly, the old mage hides a smile, thinking the squad's chaotic dynamic is topped. The girl turns to the bishop super politely, noting that the adventurer's hustle really exposes the temple's embarrassing AFK status. Super hyped for the incoming detective work, she pings the sorceress to follow the party leader straight into the action. The two sprint out of the mansion, leaving the religious leader behind with a literal question mark over his head. The wise mage throws one last analytical look at the host, showing some basic respect for the starter hospitality. But she justifies that her party member could never log off peacefully knowing an active mob is roaming the safe zone. The allies run through the mansion, yelling for the swordsman to wait up because the squad raids together. The echo of their shouts reaches the high window of a forgotten tower in the quiet village. Chilling perfectly on the dark stone ledge, a massive black crow watches the sudden aggro with intense focus. The whole town seems to be in sleep mode, completely blind to the hardcore raid that just triggered. Up in the clear sky, birds scatter across the giant full moon, lighting up the freezing night. Walking the stone pavement outside, the player just sighs, accepting the devs are hard-locking him out of a solo run. The Archmage suggests finding an NPC witness to gather intel, but the warrior instantly trashes the idea. He walks right past them, flexing his confidence, making the old mage marvel that he already solved the puzzle and is just testing them. Super curious, the cleric begs to hear the pro leaders take on exactly what kind of mob they're about to pull. The girl steps up, staring at him with massive expectations for a pro tip from the veteran. The player has to look away fast, fighting for his life to hide his inner proud dad smile from the hero's adorable act. Thinking his silence means he thinks she's a noob, she gets embarrassed and admits she lacks XP, begging him not to drop her from the party. Walking again through the empty streets, the swordsman listens to his partner keep pushing for the hidden boss's ID. The adventurer feels a quiet, legit sense of pride, figuring this girl's try-hard effort makes up for any past griefing. Skipping the useless suspense, he dryly spoils that the mob is a draugr, making the fanatic gasp as she realizes the lore fits perfectly. The sorceress upvotes the flawless read, noting they'll need to search a zone with a toxic debuff like the local graveyard. When the mage praises the student's big brain, the girl humbly replies her stats will never match the legendary duos, making the hero proud. The guy has to cover half his face with his gauntlet burning extreme calories to keep his edgy face and hide his goofy smile. But the fun stops when his brain clicks, remembering that in the vanilla version, this quest exposes massive corruption inside the local dev Tima clergy. His footsteps echo heavy on the rustic floor as he pushes forward, wondering how this epic remake will handle such a dark lore drop. Right behind, the young Inquisitor matches her master's fast pace, leaking absolute determination to clear that hidden boss. The young Inquisitor suddenly hits the brakes and calls out that she's picking up a super weird smell in the area. Walking down a dark, tight alley, she figures the toxic stench is coming straight from the village's inner zone. At that, the swordsman takes the lead, holding up his lantern to light up the sketchy path. Locked in on the quest, the adventurer pushes up carefully, scanning every pixel around him. The light reveals the logged-out body of an NPC dumped in a corner, kicking off the dark storyline. Absolutely traumatized by the heavy scene, the girl freezes up when she sees the victim's character model. The dried-up corpse makes it obvious the server started going downhill way earlier than they thought. Showing zero fear, the hero moves the light closer to inspect the drop closer. Crouching by the body, he searches the remains looking for any lore clues about the beast's attack pattern. The fanatic mutters a prayer, totally shook by such hardcore griefing against a defenseless NPC. Realizing how bad this is, the Archmage volunteers to ping the local guards ASAP, and the cleric agrees it's the optimal play. The player's eyes tilted, remembering that hunting this specific mob is a massive headache because of the gross trail it leaves. Ignoring his party's chatter, the guy keeps doing a deep scan of the forgotten NPC. Carefully touching the model, he mentally notes they spawned in way too late to stop the wipe. With a dead serious face, the Dark Knight swears he's gonna carry out this guy's revenge quest personally. Standing back up, he drops a short, respectful line for the victim to finally rest in peace. Right behind him, the young Inquisitor clasps her hands and announces she's dropping a buff to guide the poor guy's soul. Totally in the zone, the girl pours all her devotion into a silent prayer. Watching the cutscene, the adventurer admits to himself he's not very religious, but gives props to how top-tier the animation is. The Archmage respawns in the alley, letting them know the admins are already on their way to pick up the NPC. The veteran mage deduces the aggro was super recent because of the heavy debuff smell, guessing the target is still camping nearby. Without wasting a tick, she drops a massive glowing magic circle on the ground to track the beast's path. The old sage calmly explains it's a high-tier tracking spell built to lock onto dark trails. Even though she warns the buff has a short timer, she promises it's enough to find the threat's spawn point. The hero dashes ahead, ordering the squad to follow, which gets the young cleric super hyped about his shot calling. Matching his fast pace, the fanatic pops her holy aura, announcing she'll cleanse the toxic traps along the way. Seeing the bright flash the girl gives off, the swordsman feels relieved knowing they definitely won't get lost in the dark map. Sprinting through the streets following the magic GPS, the player admits he's a solo main, but having a support squad makes grinding way easier. 100 locked on the objective, the hunter keeps his eyes peeled for any sketchy movement animations. But his heavy boots slam the brakes right in the middle of the stone sidewalk. Caught off guard by the sudden lag, the young cleric accidentally crashes right into the hero's back. Staring at the obstacle, the squad realizes with pure salt that the magic trail clips straight into a massive dead-end wall. The Archmage scans the stone barrier and figures the boss used some wall hack magic to phase through it. The sage suggests finding the high ground to route a new path, and the player agrees that's the most meta strat. However, the guy smirks, deciding to abuse the game's busted movement mechanics instead. The old sorceress's eyes pop out, asking in total shock if he's really gonna spam that crazy jump again. Ignoring the warning, the warrior charges his jump and launches himself with insane stats straight at the top of the wall. Parkouring up the textures with broken agility, he climbs several meters in a single frame. With one last boosted jump, the Dark Knight flies through the moonlit sky. His metal-plated hand grips the edge of the highest roof in the village perfectly. Pulling his own weight up like it's nothing, he finally stands on top of the map, getting a bird's eye view. The landing is flawless and silent, proving he's totally mastered his agile class's skill ceiling. Down in the alley, the young cleric looks up, absolutely mind-blown by how up her party leader is. The Archmage sighs in defeat, commenting on how reckless yet focused that tryhard can be. From way up high, the swordsman looks down at his ground-locked teammates, ready to continue his solo raid. Completely hyped, the player cheers, feeling the rush of exploring the open world with such cracked mobility. Bounding across the rooftops, he's amazed by the haptic feedback on his feet and the wind hitting his face. With a huge smile, the guy jokes he unlocked a hidden jumping talent, but forces himself to focus back on the quest. Sprinting at max speed, the hero knows he needs to spot the mob before the tracking buff runs out. Stopping on the edge of a tall house, he zooms his camera onto the dark street and mutters he found his target. Staring at the stealthed mob, the warrior mocks the creature for trying to use cheap camo strats like a common rat. With a cold, calculated look, he measures the exact distance for the perfect drop attack. Pushing off the roof tile, he drops a scary voice line that the useless hide-and-seek ends right now. The Dark Knight dive bombs from the sky like a lethal meteor straight into the empty village streets. Going full psycho mode in his roleplay, the player lets out a loud, villainous laugh as he drops into the boss arena. Gripping his heavy weapon, he mentally praises how flawless this game is for allowing such insane, fun immersion. The massive impact shatters the floor, unleashing a giant pillar of dark energy as he finishes his one-liner. Sticking his blade deep into the broken pavement, the swordsman claims he's dealing out justice for the innocent NPC. Forced out of its underground bunker, the armored freak pops up from the shadows, facing its relentless attacker. But the guy's scary face vanishes instantly, replaced by a totally confused look. Looking around the empty street, the player thinks it's weird his helpers didn't magically teleport to his side. Completely impatient, the warrior raises his sword, complaining he really needed the healer here to carry the fight. Walking up carefully, he admits that fighting this boss in melee range messes up his parry timings. His slow steps show he's hesitating, thinking about kiting the boss until the game loads his missing party members. Suddenly, the adventurer senses a weird hitbox sneaking up behind him and figures it's another annoying mob. A hooded NPC steps out of the shadows, praising the warrior's guts for pulling aggro all by himself. Leaking a heavy aura, the dark fanatic drops a creepy line that his cursed master has been looking for the guy. The swordsman drops his edgy act instantly, having zero clue what this bizarre cutscene is about. His brain overheats trying to figure out why a dark cultist is trying to be friendly with an active enemy. Doing a dramatic bow, the mystery NPC offers to help him ditch the cleric ally and invites him to grief the server together. Super confused, the player tries to search his wiki knowledge of the base game, but doesn't remember any NPC with that weird title. Realizing he stepped into a terrible narrative trap, he raises his weapon, figuring out what he just triggered. The vibe gets heavy in the dark street, as the hero realizes the script just went completely off the rails. Eyes wide, the adventurer panics, realizing his villain roleplay accidentally unlocked the dreaded join the dark side route. The UI pops up relentlessly, locking in the evil choice, while a forbidden, overpowered buff activates, permanently deleting the guy's human ties. Wrapped in a blinding red aura, the system announces the warrior just unlocked stats way beyond human limits. The forbidden buff surges through his whole model, making him scream like a beast during the transformation animation. Freed from his human skin, he sprouts giant demon wings and a totally terrifying skin in the middle of a magic storm. The system confirms the ultimate power-up, adding horns to his head under a completely busted ore. Wielding a sword made of raw DPS energy, the UI declares he's finally unlocked the true Demon Knight class path. But this whole epic cinematic shatters instantly, revealing it was literally just the player's imagination about the evil route. Since he plans to do multiple playthroughs later, he decides to save that transformation for his next run, while the hooded guy calls out to him. Deciding to stick to his current rebel hero build, the adventurer swings his heavy sword without a second thought. Popping a devastating skill, a massive wave of purple energy tears through the map straight at the enemy. Landing super chill, the guy wonders internally if his skill shot actually hit the hitbox. Totally terrified, the mystery man backs up, and the adventurer gets tilted seeing the coward use the boss mob to body block. The fanatic begs for mercy, swearing he only read those dialogue lines because he was taken hostage. Glaring at the villain like he's absolute trash, the swordsman coldly asks why he'd even accept that dumb apology. Jumping back into the air, the hero drops a quote that there's no respawn for scum like him, not even in the void. Right then, the cultist frantically points up and screams a warning about the giant boss right behind the guy. The camera locks onto the real target, as the armored beast tries to squash the MC midair. Spinning his character model fast, the swordsman manages to parry the heavy strike, sparking like crazy from the clash. Landing smoothly on his feet, he trash-talks the creature's pathetic, useless attack pattern. Spamming attacks, the monster rushes in using its own shield to try and knock the player back. Super annoyed, the adventurer burns all his stamina to deflect the hit, telling the beast to get out of his face. Sliding backward across the stone floor, the hero keeps his guard up against the tanky mob. Looking completely done with this, the guy admits how much he hates fighting mobs with janky hitboxes. Cleanly dodging another swing, he realizes the cowardly ally gave the boss a defense buff, making the fight a massive chore. Theory crafting the best strat, the hunter decides it'll be way easier to delete the support NPC first. Plus, a hyped smile pops up on his face as he remembers a game mechanic he really wants to test right now. With a lightning-fast animation, the warrior dashes off the ground, totally ignoring the armored freak. Trying to peel for its master, the beast fires off a massive wave of dark energy at the intruder. Clipping right past the AoE, the player abuses the leftover iframes from his last active skill. Blown away, he notices the spell's buff stayed active even though he didn't trigger the downward slash combo. His eyes light up at the discovery, perfectly understanding the busted, exploit the combat engine just handed him. Screaming the name of his brutal ultimate, the knight executes a flawless uppercut slash. The magic-infused blade connects directly with the boss's support NPC with pixel-perfect accuracy. A devastating red explosion nukes the area while the enemy takes the full raw damage of the hit. The UI updates the tracker, confirming the target got deleted as the smoke clears on the wrecked street. With a smug smile, the adventurer rests his weapon on his shoulder, celebrating that the annoying obstacle has despawned. Down on the floor and shaking with fear, the cultist curls up, remembering the death threats he just got. Panicking, the guy tries to defend his actions, claiming he would have never griefed the guild if he knew the boss was watching. Connecting the lore dots, the player realizes this minion is the exact reason for all the useless fetch quests earlier. The fanatic keeps crying, warning that the adventurer isn't just a basic heretic, but the most broken threat on the server. A flashback hits the coward's mind, remembering an admin order demanding that warrior's head as a bounty. Pointing a dirty finger, the villain calls the MC by the dreaded title of Demonic Knight. The cultist's memory highlights the heretic's busted stats, proving how absolutely terrified he is. Hiding his hype behind a scary face, the guy internally pops off, forgetting all the lore drops without pressing a single button. Suddenly, the redhead Inquisitor crashes the scene looking furious, asking if the downed NPC is the wanted sinner. Glowing with blinding holy light, the hero charges in with her divine weapon, announcing she's here to assist her party leader in the raid. Totally losing his mind over the situation, the cultist crawls on the ground, demanding to know why he just got backstabbed. Screaming at max volume, he angrily asks why his supposed boss is turning his back on his own faction. With a face full of pure boredom, the adventurer answers honestly that he has absolutely zero clue what's going on either. Shrugging it off, the player figures he doesn't care who this leader is, trusting the script to dump the lore later. A smile of pure gamer joy lights up his face, loving how the storyline is just pure chaos. Snapping back into his scary persona, he lifts his heavy blade, charging up his finisher. Wrapped in a creepy blue aura, the hero announces that trash like him doesn't get to ask questions. A storm of energy crashes down as he orders the villain to pay for the debuffs he cast. After the night raid wraps up, the sunrise lights up the massive temple structure in the middle of town. The squad's footsteps echo through the fancy halls, pulling aggro from the local priests. Resting his sword on his shoulder with max swagger, the knight walks point, leading the party like a boss. Right behind him, the redhead Inquisitor follows her carry with total blind faith. Stopping in front of the NPCs, the warrior smirks and drops the news that the target actually survived the encounter. Dumped on the temple floor, the cultist shakes with fear, surrounded by admins glaring at him. The old sorceress tightens the magic CC chains on the prisoner, making sure his escape route is hard locked. Flashing back to the capture in the dark street, the hero shoots a toxic glare at his ally, asking if she's gonna throw the run. Gripping the magic chains, the sorceress tells him to chill, arguing that keeping the mob alive drops way better intel. With an analytical look, the sage warns the mob they fought was a rare spawn, proving there's a big boss pulling the strings. Reluctantly accepting the strat, the guy does a dramatic 180 turn looking incredibly badass. On the inside, the player admits he was only trying to lower the enemy's HP bar to trigger the auto-capture mechanic. Back in the present, the adventurer sees the quest complete banner and figures the mage's scolding was just a forced cutscene. Walking through the mansion halls, he praises how well they overhauled the clunky old mechanics. But then, the holy lighting in the zone starts triggering a weird bug with his character's dark attribute. Confused, the swordsman stops walking when the UI starts pinging danger alerts out of nowhere. Dozens of red pop-ups spam his screen, warning his HP is dropping fast because of the temple's AoE damage. He wanted to stick around for the interrogation cutscene, but the duty forces him to drop party and fall back. Super salty about the invisible wall, he turns around and heads straight for the exit of the safe zone. Staring at his metal gauntlet, the guy guesses the sealed beast in his arm is the reason he's getting rejected by the system. Predicting the lore, he finds it hilarious the game forces him down a cleric route, but hard locks him out of their main hub with a holy barrier. But instead of rage quitting, the player drops a sadistic smirk, hyped that the difficulty just got cranked to max. Leaving the temple behind, the MC reminds himself he didn't boot up this game to play on easy mode. The UI shows his HP dropping, proving that role-playing a cursed build only works if you actually have the mechanical skill to back it up. A quick flashback shows a squad getting wiped by opposing elemental damages, proving that acting cool means nothing if you're a trash player. With heavy steps, the swordsman walks out the massive holy gates straight into the dark street. Once outside, the guy secretly admits he's feeling kinda lonely, with nothing to do now that his party members despawn. A prompt pops up telling him to talk to the bishop, making him guess the main quest is soft-locked until the interrogation ends. Not knowing how to kill his AFK time, the warrior turns around when he hears someone call his fake title. The young Inquisitor comes sprinting up to him, out of breath, begging to rejoin his party for the run. Looking at the girl, the player thinks it's wild how she always spawns the second he thinks of her, acting like a needy puppy. Keeping his cold act up, the guy asks why she didn't stay inside to watch the cutscene with the prisoner. The cleric casually drops that the archmage herself told her to stick to his side. Hearing that, the adventurer pictures a hilarious scene of the old sorceress, passing the annoying escort mission straight to him. As they start walking side by side, he asks if his partner literally has no other quests to grind. With an annoyed sigh, the warrior mutters some toxic complaints, realizing his solo piece is gone again. Ignoring his tilt, the fanatic asks if he only grinds mobs when an NPC hands him the quest markers on a silver platter. The girl gets mind blown all of a sudden, guessing his toxic attitude was actually a high IQ lesson on detective work. Super hyped, she praises the master's big brain while the player tries to hint he literally just wanted to farm XP by hitting things. Facepalming, the guy cringes at having to carry a party member programmed specifically to hype him up 24/7. He admits in his own head that the girl's hyperactive, energetic vibe is actually adorable. But being a massive introvert IRL, the hero feels his social battery draining fast from all that attention targeted at him. The swordsman thinks it's super ironic he was just whining about being lonely, and now desperately wants to hit the mute button. Locking back onto the quest, he notes the sun's down and getting intel from normal NPCs will be a drag, so he routes them to the guild. The cleric agrees and pumps her fist, hyped to go look for bounty boards on the new threats. Holding his head in stress, the player fights for his life not to break character and ruin his own immersion. He panics mentally, crying that his edgy persona physically blocks him from treating the girl as nicely as she deserves. A bit later, the duo pulls up to the massive wooden lodge that acts as the main hub for hunters. A busted sign outside confirms the waypoint, signaling they're finally gonna get some quest progression. Tagging along, the Archmage praises the strat, admitting she'd never think to exploit the adventurer's resources like that. The sorceress drops a line that real lore is found on the streets, while the knight slams the counter demanding urgent quest logs. The NPC checks his badge and says confirmed sightings are super rare, asking if rumor-based logs work. The warrior orders him to hand over the files ASAP, leaving the NPC shook that the meathead actually leveled his reading stat. The guy pulls a file on recent deaths involving bad smells, but warns the local temple claimed the raid. Flexing max arrogance, the swordsman claims he already soloed that exact boss, leaving the clerk totally lost. Seeing the massive gold payout offered, the player mouths internally, realizing the devs robbed him of an easy farm. Realizing they're soft-locked, the cat sage asks if there are any random despawns or NPCs turning hostile. Scanning the party, the clerk spots their gold-tier badges and agrees to leak the unverified server gossip. He explains that normally, players have to grind this intel themselves or pay a massive fee to an information broker. Without a word, the old mage and the inquisitor flash their max-level faction badges to flex their VIP status. The clerk goes into a respectful panic instantly, while the player laughs at how perfectly the rep system is coded. Hyped, the hero chuckles internally at the poor night shift NPC, who just pulled 3 legendary spawns at once. Sweating buckets, the clerk searches his dialogue tree trying to find any recent glitches in the matrix. Stuttering, he reports the guild tracked a massive drop in the spawn rate of pickpockets in the zone. Plus, the beggar population tanked, making the mods suspect a new plague debuff in the slums. The NPC apologizes for the trash intel, and the player crunches the data to set the next waypoint. With zero warning, the young cleric loses it and slams both hands on the wooden counter violently. Radiating an aura of absolute fury, the girl screams, asking if there are really players cowardly enough to do that. The swordsman tells his dramatic partner to chill, holding back a laugh at how cute her rage animation is. Reading the code, the player guesses this dialogue is the classic trigger to spawn the next major boss. The clerk freezes in terror, refusing to believe an evil mob could actually bypass the city's safe zone. The sorceress promises the bug needs fixing, and tells the guy to send a ticket straight to the temple if he gets updates. Internally, the adventurer complains about his lazy teammates always dumping the grind on other people. Celebrating that he's not a broke wage cager IRL, he turns around ready to leave while the girl asks for the next marker. Skipping the fluff, the party leader firmly announces they're moving the raid to the poorest slum in the village. The old mage backs the play instantly, ready to scan the alleys where the beggars used to spawn. The fanatic's eyes get a shiny, starry glow, hyping up her master's fast and calculated shot calling. The trio walks out of the guild side by side, with the young girl whispering she wants to keep leveling up her skills. Deep in thought, the warrior remembers the invisible duty he took at the holy base, feeling like the devs sent a huge warning there. His veteran instincts tell him a massive misunderstanding is about to trigger a PvP wipe against the entire cleric faction. He can already perfectly picture his redhead teammates screaming how much she hates him when his true classes leak. Already taking psychic damage from his own theory, the guy admits his heart hurts just predicting that dramatic cutscene. Trying to cope, he figures her betrayal will at least render an epic cinematic and cries nervously. Sighing heavily, the player drops the silly anxiety when a new glowing marker pops up on his HUD. The pop-up confirms the quest updated, but he roasts the lazy title that literally just says find the pickpocket. The knight pushes through the quiet streets, leading the squad back into the hardcore night grind. Amazed, the Inquisitor asks how the leader knows the exact routing to the most toxic, complicated zone on the map. The hero chuckles to himself, knowing he's literally just following the thousands of red dots on his minimap overlay. To keep his wise guy act going, he drops a toxic lore line saying trash always piles up in the same dump. His UI renders dozens of hostile human NPCs clustered in the narrow alleys just ahead. Keeping his relentless walking animation going, the swordsman shoots a quick glance at the devoted girl. Breaking the ice, the warrior warns her that a zone full of cowards and toxicity is the worst spawn point for her build. His shadow stretches across the cobblestone as he walks casually, confident he can carry any physical aggro they pull. A drone view shows how tightly packed the sketchy shacks are, totally swallowed by the violent pitch-black night. But as soon as they reach the nightmare drop zone, the guy glares and asks who just had the audacity to say that line. Cornered in a wall, a local thug starts sweating buckets, struggling to tank the terrifying pressure of the interrogation. Tied up and tossed near a cauldron in the shack, the crook realizes acting tough is useless against raw DPS. The Inquisitor grills the captured thug, demanding he swear to the devs and drop only facts. Gripping her weapon tight, the cleric aggressively asks if he's 100% sure the admins took the NPCs. Rewinding a bit before this whole mess, the party was just roaming the dark alleys of the PvP zone. The swordsman was on point, walking right past the girl with his usual intimidating swagger. Right then the fanatic looks back, checking for any sketchy animations in the dark. Paused in the street, the adventurer notes the zone's vibe is totally off, and the old mage agrees, saying her radar is pinging threats everywhere. The player calculates the board in silence, figuring out the optimal play. Fast as always, he intercepts a thief trying to stealth past, knowing exactly when the event was scripted to start. Ragdolled on the floor with zero counterplay, the thief begs for mercy. The crook stares up at the dark night, absolutely petrified by his massive boss aura. Clamping down on the criminal's wrist with raw stats, the hero points out he had a lot of nerve to try that exploit. With an ice-cold voice line, the guy suggests the thief co-op if he wants to keep his hands attached to his model. Internally, the player is doing backflips, celebrating that his read was perfect, and he even pre-planned his voice lines. He notes that games usually slap a big marker on VIP targets to carry noobs. But when there's zero UI assist, it means the target is hard-coded to walk right into you like a free delivery. The adventurer brags that he left his gold unequipped as bait, leaving the thief salty over his terrible RNG luck. Wasting no frames, the Inquisitor steps up and aims her heavy weapon right at the downed criminal's neck. Flexing admin authority, she recites server rules banning players from griefing other people's loot. The girl pushes her ruthless ban phase, saying thieves need to take the penalty for their actions. The Archmage instantly interrupts, telling her to chill and warning that the ban hammer shouldn't be spammed blindly. Tilted by the defense, the cleric claps back that the guy is a griefer caught lacking right on their screens. Flipping her stance fast, the fanatic points to the swordsman as an example, claiming sometimes mercy buffs the team. The rookie's brain renders a glowing image of the hero, seeing him as the ultimate GM of peaceful mercy. She tells the old mage to stop throwing and try to learn from their carry's wholesome game. The Inquisitor closes her eyes, nodding proudly for choosing such an enlightened skill tree. Watching the whole thing, the player sweats bullets, feeling totally awkward and wondering if he accidentally popped a holy aura emote. The weird vibe snaps when the bandit complains, asking how long he's gonna be stun-locked like this. Taking back the lobby, the hero orders the crook to route them straight to the zone boss. That quick maneuver is exactly how the squad speedrun to the Beggar King's hideout. Back to the live interrogation, the fanatic grills the local boss, who swears on everything that it's the temple's fault. The spooked guy asks if it wasn't the holy mods themselves who escorted the players to rehab. Hearing the heavy report, the Inquisitor loses it and screams that the claim is a permaban offense. The girl yells that those events are time-gated, and falsely using the admin tag is a massive exploit. The cat sage mutes her student's rant, saying the church's to us doesn't matter right now. Watching the cutscene, the MC is shook, since he thought this whole detective gig was just a basic fetch quest. Connecting the dots, the player completely understands why the cleric class got so much screen time in his edgy route. Hyped about unlocking the main lore, the hero demands the boss drop the exact timestamps and victim count. Shaking, the Beggar King confesses the despawn started quietly about a month ago. The crook breaks down that the whole process was super stealthy, looking exactly like a brutal kidnapping ring. Realizing he messed up, the guy panics, swearing it was just a figure of speech, but the adventurer instantly reads his guilty animation. Going totally feral, the young cleric lunges to grab the bandit's collar, demanding some respect. The old sorceress takes charge again, locking onto the main kidnapping plotline. Grilling the criminal with her analytical scan, the Archmage asks if the pulls followed a set spawn timer. Sweating hard, the man confirms the raids happened a few times a week, perfectly syncing with the cleric patrol timers. Hearing the deep lore, the magic user crunches the data, realizing the server state is way more corrupted than they thought. The Archmage's eyes go wide, absolutely horrified by a dark theory rendering in her brain. Covering her face in total despair, the old mage figures the NPCs were being farmed as sacrifices for the mobs. The Inquisitor rejects the theory, screaming the holy admins would never run such a toxic griefing scheme. The Dark Knight shuts down the girl's tantrum, calling her blind faith absolute low IQ copium. Casually adjusting his gauntlet, the hero gets ready to drop a massive reality check on his partner. With a rock-solid voice, he declares that server wipes happen whether a player believes in them or not. On the inside, the player smiles widely, loving how shattering her lore builds character development for the protagonist. He figures trauma adds depth to the script and pushes forward, demanding the exact coordinates where the victims were dragged. The beggar boss stutters helplessly, saying he only gets low-tier gossip from the kid NPCs and lacks the exact waypoint. The adventurer shoots a sharp look, already knowing the exact exploit to bypass this dialogue block. Looking at the pickpocket he CC'd earlier, he ironically notes the prisoner decided not to log out. The young thief strikes a brave pose, guessing the raid is massive if it involves fighting those dark bugs. The swordsman dashes up to the girl, clipping right into her personal space with max swagger. Totally intimidated by the jump scare, the girl stutters, backing her face up out of pure stress. Melted internally, the guy cheers for the trope and admits he loves NPCs with this spunky AI. Satisfied she passed the vibe check, the swordsman orders her to take point and drop the pin. Far-off crows spam their creepy sound effects across the dark roofs, hyping up the night's active event. The squad pushes through the toxic, trash-filled streets, walking past stray dogs farming the garbage on the road. Leading the party, the young thief looks back, clearly stressed by the massive aggro her new escorts pull. The whole filter changes as they clip into the most forgotten, corrupted chunks of the slum map. The guide demands they unequip their weapons if they want the local NPCs to trigger any dialogue. Pointing at the fanatic, the girl warns that the faction penalty against the temple is maxed out here. Super offended by the pop-up, the cleric crosses her arms, snapping back that she'd never party up with griefers anyway. The thief loses it and screams at the partner not to throw the run and get her banned too. Watching the PvP, the player compares them to stray cats fighting and thinks the dynamic is ultra cute. The guy wonders if the devs coded the thief to be the classic edgy rogue with a heart of gold companion. Then he pauses, wondering if using animal metaphors would catch a ban in a universe full of beastmen. The party keeps grinding through the dead alleys, totally blind to the fact that someone is spectating their stream. Crouched on top of a building, a hooded NPC watches them, instantly triggering the system's red danger ping. Getting the red alert on his HUD, the Dark Knight grips his sword hilt, prepping his blade for an instant PvP clash. The thief on the roof screams in panic, demanding to know what the warrior is doing and begging him not to pull out his massive sword. Keeping his cold, boss-level posture, the MC glares at the target and warns that if the random doesn't want to see the blade unsheathed, he better make the first move. Pointing his heavy sword straight up at the building, the Dark Knight orders the intruder to unequip his combat gear right now. A confident smirk renders on the informant's face when he notices the absurd speed stat of the guy down below. With a super agile jump, the mystery man lands flawlessly on the roof right in front of the adventurer. He drops into a totally chill, relaxed idle animation, showing zero fear of getting wiped. Inspecting the massive character model up close, the bandit spots the split-colored hair and the iconic gauntlet on the hero's arm. The eye patch accessory fully confirms his wiki search about the terrifying guy's true identity. Hitting a super troll bowing emote, the hooded feline formally greets the famous demonic knight. Right then, the archmage and the inquisitor finally catch up to their carry, and the redhead asks confusedly if the random troll is on his friends list. The swordsman's edgy act drops for a frame, having literally zero clue who the guy on the roof is. His veteran gamer brain instantly flags the NPC as a plot device spawned just to railroad them to the next quest marker. Throwing his arrogant aura back on, he tells his party not to get it twisted, claiming he only knows the guy from global chat since he acts like a server VIP. He turns his head with max disrespect and asks what the wannabe spy wants, joking if he expects a commendation just for scanning his name tag. Laughing out loud, the cat guy claps back smoothly, saying he was literally about to type the exact same question in chat. The thief's look gets super sharp as he tries to data mine why such a random squad fast-traveled to this dead zone. The cleric loses her temper instantly, screaming about how this griefer dares to call them the Divine's lapdogs. Consumed by an insane tank-level protectiveness, she asks if the scammer plans to help them kidnap more low-level NPCs off the streets. Caught totally off guard by the heavy report, the feline waves his hands denying the griefing, while the MC zones out finding the stray cat fight hilarious. Still super tilted, the Inquisitor states firmly that the party fast-traveled here specifically to raid the missing persons questline. The bandit freezes for a tick, trying to process the crazy lore drop that children got dragged off by those brutal mobs. Putting the pieces of the horror puzzle together, the hooded guy finally grasps the terrifying scale of the server-wide threat. With his classic deadpan, ruthless expression, the knight guesses out loud that the local temple admins might be running the dirty exploit themselves. The old mage takes the mic with max wisdom, claiming they're just solo players trying to uncover the lore because they don't trust the guild. Using a super chill voice line, the Archmage begs the veteran informant to co-op with the squad to stop more NPCs from getting wiped. The thief looks away fast, showing massive hesitation to queue up with such an extreme high aggro party. His green eyes glow brightly as he silently calculates the RNG survival odds of joining this massive raid. Deciding to assist, the feline snaps his fingers in the air, signaling he just locked in his final dialogue choice. He turns around to vanish into the dark alley and tells the squad to port back to base and submit the bug report immediately. The adventurer stares at him completely bored and dryly asks if the wannabe hero is planning to solo the raid entirely by himself. Flexing an unbreakable confidence stat, the bandit promises he can kite any danger perfectly, no matter how busted the boss is. Right behind them, the quest UI pings for the cleric squad, successfully confirming the checkpoint for the next stage. The swordsman mumbles, trying to remember where he's seen that cocky avatar before, but gives up because the zone's lighting is too dark. Not wasting any frames on filler dialogue, he turns his back and orders the informant to follow him without lagging. The whole party starts speed-walking down the cobblestone, leaving the thief frozen on his tile, totally lost on their party dynamic. Spooked by the sudden aggro push, the feline yells, asking if they seriously aren't gonna wait for the official server backup to spawn. Jogging fast down the streets, the Archmage sighs, complaining she never expected to be caught in a speedrun at her level. Despite whining about her stamina bar, the old sorceress pops an AoE movement buff, making sure she won't drag the team's clear time down. The Inquisitor cheers happily while sprinting, dropping a massive thank you for the god-tier speed buff she just got from the master. Internally, the adventurer guesses this is all just a forced scripted event to make them rush to the next POI. He just mentally prays they can clear the dungeon before his expensive VR token timer hits 0. Thanks to the support magic, the squad crosses the entire night map in a flash and safely hits the crowded trading zone. The hooded informant stops at the busy street corner and stealthily pings the exact coordinates where the hostages are stashed. The young redhead's eyes go wide, super confused how a hardcore kidnapping dungeon could just be a basic veggie shop. The cat sage narrows her eyes and drops a warning that she's scanning a high-tier magic barrier cast by a max-level user. The bandit smiles, hyping the mage's crazy high perception stat, confirming the heavy ward is hidden right in the warehouse basement. The floating quest panel glows in the MC's face again, officially prompting him to find a stealth route into the building. Reading the board calmly, the Archmage figures dispelling the ward will be an easy minigame since it's only coded for stealth. Hard-locked on the system prompt, the player rejects the tactical play with a super short reply, realizing the quest doesn't actually force a stealth run. 100 committed to solving the puzzle with his fists, the warrior announces in global chat that he's gonna breach the shop by smashing the front door. The informant loses it over the toxic play, screaming to ask if the giant tank has completely lost his mind. He tries to argue the squad has zero intel on the dungeon layout, and that going loud will pull aggro from every mod in the zone. Giving zero cares to the coward's logic, the swordsman says he doesn't care about the RNG, already equipping his weapon for max damage. Throwing on his classic ruthless Punisher pose, he coldly declares that kidnapping is a way higher ban offense than a little trespassing. His heavy, resolute steps echo toward the lit entrance, as he tells anyone with low morale to stay AFK outside. Internally, the guy admits his stamina is so low that he literally just spammed the first edgy voice line he thought of to skip the dialogue. He comforts his own conscience, guaranteeing that those two devoted NPC sidekicks will blindly follow him into any boss room regardless. The informant watches the ridiculous cutscene sweating bullets, asking the void if this raid leader always solves puzzles by griefing. Chuckling softly, the old sorceress finds the question hilarious, recalling she literally partied up with this weirdo less than a week ago. The religious fanatic squints with unbreakable faith, putting 100 of her trust in her carry's shot calling. Gripping her holy weapon super tight, the Inquisitor admits she hates doubting the server admins, but seriously fears they're setting up a dark ritual event. Realizing the apocalyptic scale of this nightmare, the thief gulps hard and nervously warns the party can't afford to waste another tick here. Dashing right past the lagging ally, the girl tells him to go hide in stealth if he's scared, announcing his escort quest is officially over. Blown away by the kid's resolve, the informant marvels at how much her mindset leveled up since partying with the Dark Warrior. The devoted cleric sprints down the dark hallway with absolute focus on the breach, leaving the feline paused behind to process the high-risk play. Scratching his head in pure stress, the bandit mutters about the insanity of pushing a blind corner straight into the enemy spawn. The guy's expression gets dark and quiet for a frame, weighing the permadeath risks tied to this totally rushed breach. Sighing super frustrated that he can't just play selfishly, the feline sprints desperately after the hero squad, crying that this carry job is gonna bankrupt him. Meanwhile, inside the totally wrecked shop, the swordsman steps boredly on a floor covered in mashed veggies and code mobs. Facing the street door, the hero asks the late-spawning helpers if they really plan to let him solo clear the entire room. Standing in the middle of the absolute chaotic mess he just made, the warrior announces he already cleared the first floor and is 100 ready to drop down. Spamming his classic monster-level strength, the adventurer yanks the metal trapdoors off the floor so hard the tearing sound effect echoes through the room. Hiding his surprise with max swagger, the guy touches his eye patch, dropping a sarcastic line about finding this super convenient secret path. He starts going down the stairs leaking pure hype to fight the zone boss, while the redhead enters the room, jaw dropped, realizing her carry wiped the floor in seconds. The archmage drops a friendly smile seeing the AoE destruction, praising the raid leader for literally fighting like he's on his last life. Paused at the secret staircase, the adventurer warns that anyone who is scared can log out right now, while internally admitting he was totally waiting for them. The Inquisitor rushes up holding her shield and begs the warrior not to leave them behind in the lobby. With chill, stealthy steps, the swordsman walks down the dark stairs keeping his boss-level posture. But suddenly he pauses and looks over his shoulder, super confused by the debuff he just felt. The guy notices a weird, tingling tick in the air, trying to read what kind of elemental damage it is. Right behind, the cleric speeds up and drops a hard warning that she's scanning a massive dark energy spike coming from the basement. The old archmage matches the fast pace, warning the mobs must be channeling a server-wiping event down there. The feline informant agrees to rush, while the sorceress preps an AoE speed buff to carry everyone downstairs. Watching the squad's pathing, the player realizes with absolute hype that this is his first time running a full co-op raid in this VR world. He wonders, super curious, just how advanced and realistic his party's combat AI will be in a live boss fight. Totally pumped for the new gameplay, the hunter admits he can't wait to test the team's synergy on the field. The party finally hits the bottom of the long stairs, breaching the secret tunnel that was locked. A massive flash of magic explodes in the room, announcing the hero's sudden and aggressive spawn into the arena. The hooded fanatics snap their heads in absolute shock, realizing their secret bunker just got wall-banged. Completely panicking, one of the mobs screams that the summoning cast bar wasn't even full yet. The cult leader rages at the terrible RNG of getting interrupted right at the critical phase. Hiding behind the tank line, the informant points in awe at the raid leader's massive, fearless stance. The archmage keeps her face super calm, totally locked in for the hardcore boss fight coming up. The swordsman wastes 0 frames, instantly charging a threatening dark energy attack straight into his cursed arm. Emitting a blinding holy buff, the young cleric screams with max faith that the banhammer has finally arrived for this trash. Seeing the actual threat, the boss orders his ads to stall the timer until the dark ritual finishes casting. He raises his hands wrapped in black magic and spams his dark summons with 0 mercy. Creepy skull assets start spawning out of the floor as the fanatic spams his summoner skill. A massive wave of cursed skeletons stands up fast to try and body block the invader's push. The old sorceress asks for peel so she can cast, and the cat thief confidently promises to cover her flank. Fueled by an unbreakable buff, the fanatic pushes the front line, declaring the server's light is backing her up to cleanse the zone. She clips right past the Dark Warrior, proudly taking the main tank's spot with her heavy shield. The adventurer just drops his classic edgy voice line, demanding an absolute W for his blade. With a hyperfast, devastating AoE swing, he clears the mobs out of the way, swearing eternal glory to the devs. Sword in hand and looking totally bored, the hunter coldly announces he has absolutely 0 plans of giving up the DPS frontline to anyone. The young cleric gets stun-locked for a second, totally mesmerized by her carry's mechanical skill in the arena. She hypes up the god-tier Slash, but quickly complains that he literally left 0 mobs for her to farm. Gripping her weapon tight, the girl swears she's gonna prove her own gear score in this raid too. Dropping a glowing, crushing smash, the hero deletes a mob, claiming her spot as the squad's official off-tank. Checking out his teammates' stats, the player gets tilted realizing her kill steals aren't filling up his XP bar at all. Refusing to lose more points, he goes back to spamming attacks while trying to read the next quest phase. A quick theory pops into his head when he remembers a super specific lore detail about how rituals are cast in this game. Meanwhile, the cult leader keeps spamming his dark mana pool to summon even more broken abominations into the room. The cursed boss screams with max toxicity, promising the griefers will pay a massive toll for the unforgivable interrupt. Pointing his finger straight at the MC, the fanatic commands his beasts to eat him as the night's first major drop. A massive shadow model throws itself violently at the adventurer to try and execute the weird command. The old mage and the informant go into instant panic mode seeing the brute force dash closing. The young cleric turns her head, completely terrified by the lethal aggro her carry just pulled. But the warrior perfect parries the colossal hit like it's a joke, right on the exact frame his ally screams in panic for him. Not dropping a single sweat pixel, the hunter's eye flashes with an insane analytical coldness while staring down the giant beast. The massive undead horde fully surrounds the party, while the heroine spams her carry's name in distress. Radiating a blinding holy ow-e to light up the room, she swears she'll peel him out of that lethal trap instantly. Ignoring the girl's panic, the swordsman burns his jump cooldown and launches into the air with cracked agility. Paused midair for a tick, he funnels his entire dark mana pool to prep an ultimate ow-e wipe. The Inquisitor watches her partner's jump, completely mesmerized by his ruthless posture in the middle of the raid chaos. Scanning the grouped-up mobs, the player celebrates internally that this clustering makes his ow-e farming ridiculously easy. Deciding to speedrun this phase, he drops a scary voice line that he's gonna delete all these bugs in one click. With a lethal dive bomb animation, the warrior slams his giant blade directly into the bunker's stone floor. A deafening shockwave explodes across the whole arena, instantly shattering the mob's hitboxes into pixels. The Inquisitor has to snap her heavy shield up fast to block the violent knockback from that busted Super shocked by the raw environmental damage, she hypes up the monstrous DPS her ally just dropped. The cult boss gets ragdolled backward violently, shaking with terror after witnessing that broken ultimate. Downed and totally vulnerable, the fanatic spams the help ping right as the hooded thief stealths up behind him. On the other side of the wrecked room, the hero slowly completes his stand-up animation in the dust, locking in a death glare. Focused 100 on the main quest target, the adventurer hardlocks his aim onto the cultist who caused this whole mess. The cult boss goes into absolute panic, realizing he's the next target for the swordsman's aggro. Desperate to keep his HP bar, he commands the leftover trash mobs to rush the warrior to try and buy some frames. But the hunter shreds the remaining adds with zero APM effort, making the boss scream for him to stay out of melee range. With literally zero counterplay left, the coward turns his back and sprints away crying, begging the admins not to ban him. The feline informant pops out, body-blocking the escape route with a chill vibe, letting him know the boundary wall is solid. With a cold voice and an edgy face, the hero declares the trash needs to be dropped into the deepest pit of the void. A slash charged with cursed energy violently tears through the map to permanently ban the garbage. The brutal hitbox connects perfectly with the fanatic's back, ragdolling him hard right into the center of his own summoning circle. Completely wiped and dumped on the rocks, the cursed NPC loses all his HP, officially ending the nightmare in the basement.